Welcome to the Gray Range Podcast. My name is David Rousseau. We're going to explore the poetry of how we live, how we learn, and how we find our way along this strange path we call life. If you are curious about people, their stories, and all things savage and wonderful, join me on the Gray Range. All right. We're back with another episode of the Gray Range Podcast, and we're joined today by Landon Mortenson.
That's correct.
Like Viggo Mortensen?
That's correct. He's related to me somewhere. I just don't know how far.
I would claim that all the time.
Yeah, we're cousins.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we actually are like third cousins or something.
Oh wow.
Shit. All right. There's not a lot of Mortensens in North America.
Okay. I could see that.
They're all from Denmark.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, man, that's not a super common name.
It means son of death.
Fucking A, it does.
Oh, we're going to dig into that.
Oh, shit. That makes sense.
If you think about it, it's...
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In kind of like some Latin way. Get back in there. Son of death. Fuck. Yeah, that's a damn good name. Strong name. I like it.
Thank you. I didn't pick it.
He was just blessed to be part of that.
I was just
exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. Just some strong genealogy. You probably got a lot of like old school, like medieval warriors in your past.
Yeah, well, there's been some debate. We've never done one of those 23andMe or anything, so we're kind of up in the air on whether we were Viking warlords or morticians.
Ooh. Either way, I mean.
Yeah.
Either way, they were rich.
So is it Scandinavian heritage then? Is that okay? Well,
the biggest part of me, I'm pretty much a mutt, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
The biggest part of my genealogy that we are tracking is Danish.
Okay.
All right. That makes sense.
A little bit of warlord back there.
Yeah. At least, or dead people, one of the two.
Well, everybody's got some dead people in their past. we're all descended of dead people.
Fact.
So, as always, we start each episode with a piece. This will be a piece from my newest collection, Whiskey Painted Holocaust. And I think I got one that's... right on topic with how we've started this thing. This is called Taking the Hill. They are dug in deep, withstanding barrage after barrage for days. The bastards. We wrested them from their strongholds, chased them from their palaces, but they relented not 1 inch without a fight. They shed the blood of millions. With their wanton disregard, they forced our hand. By their crimes, they birthed the revolution. For we had sacrificed safety and sanctity and high moral virtue to join them in their bloodletting. He who stops bleeding first dies. We were the high hill dwellers. We had long views, so easily weighted eyes to look down on the world. These anointed ones, they were just men and women, but we imbued them with power and blessed them with the sword and the balances. Faithfully, they would mete out justice in the name of the people. Naive? Sure we were. They were only human. So the fault in this war lies as much with our faith as with their betrayal. I whispered words of comfort to my children as the state police went door to door seeking the new terrorists, people whose only crime was saying no. So quickly power alters the mind, how perfectly its corruption winnows out the decent. Those whose bellies hunger only for power and influence once marched in lockstep with some righteous crusade. The initiates remember their books. They recognize the signs. They remember seeing the pulpit turn and the markets empty. They watched the populace get thin while the judges got fat and the high hills became a breeding ground for monsters. High times for predators when the fences are down. When the dogs have all been starved, even they might take a chicken. Even the faithful lose heart and are corrupted. Everyone does what they need to survive. The days have certainly been frightening, but for those whose sport is hunting monsters, we'll hit them hard again. They're dug in on the hill, but we can take them. The guilty will know justice. God wills it. The time comes soon. We muster for the charge. All hell breaks loose. history is made. We have played our parts in the game of blood and power. What satisfying trade. This is how the world is saved. Not on the hill, but on the battlefield.
I dig it.
Well, I mean, you don't have to look far these days to see people in comfortable positions calling for war. And you don't have to look far to find corruption. I think in this in the situation we're in right now, there's so much coming out about the way the world actually is. With like I said, I was just listening to that Joe Rogan and Ian Carroll podcast, and Ian Carroll's I don't know, a professional conspiracy theorist, an independent researcher, let's say, using open source intelligence to kind of dig up backgrounds on current events and see things like that. But this is something new where we can look into these situations. We're not taking, the government or industry's word on anything. We can do our own research. And the more we dig, the more we find. And the more we find about, specifically about war, about how, people are getting rich on either side. The people who send the people to war are not the people fighting the war. And I think we're a little bit more informed to stand up and to maybe make different decisions. And I think that what we're seeing right now, living in Canada, we're seeing, we've got a government that maybe doesn't want to relinquish power, even though they've lost the will of the people for a lot of it.
Well, I think when you live in a failed state, I mean, we're getting close to North Korea as far as you look at you look at how the government conducts itself, and you're like, well, it's just a big fucking clown show. So
yeah. So, Landon, you spent some time in the Canadian military.
I did.
So before we get to that, just where did you grow up, and are you from this area or from Alberta? Or?
I'm born in Alberta, raised in Saskatchewan, back in Alberta.
Oh, okay.
I'm everything.
Where were you
liberals
born?
hate.
Where were you born, if you don't mind?
I'm born in Brooks.
Oh, okay. Southern Alberta. Nothing wrong with Brooks, man.
Yeah, the city that, what do they call it? Stinky City?
yeah,
The slaughterhouse is right off the road,
That's
upwind of the city.
Was your family in like agriculture or something like that?
Yeah, we, well, I was born in Brooks. I was raised in Tilly for the first 3 and a bit years.
Oh, okay.
We moved to Saskatchewan. And we were ranchers the whole time until BSC hit.
oh yeah,
Right. Okay. Was that like a big hit in Canada? I know it was a huge thing in the UK.
It was big enough. It affected prices enough for my dad. Like, I was too young to be a big part of it because I was probably only, 8 or 10 when that happened.
Okay.
So everything kind of started going downhill from there. And my dad had to sell our ranch that we had because we had a bigger portion of a valley in southwest Saskatchewan, like right near the border of the U.S.
okay.
Oh, it's a beautiful country down there, man.
It was really cool.
Yeah, I have some friends that are from there. They showed me some pictures, and I was like, "That's in Canada."
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's kind of the opposite of what you think of when you think of Saskatchewan, because you think flat, open plains. But like we always said, it's negative terrain. So like if you go up on, we lived on a bench, which was literally just a flat part, which was stepped up to another flat part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you got down in the bench, it was full of valleys.
Yeah.
So like that's why we said we had negative terrain. 'Cause, like I grew up in rolling hills with like creeks and trees and everything. But if you got out of the valley, it was flat.
Yeah.
It was really neat. If for people who've been there, they know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of that, and I likened that sort of terrain more to, maybe North Dakota, Montana, that kind of stuff. But I was like, oh man, that's Canada. That's beautiful out there, man.
Was that so? When they had to sell off, was that in the early 2000s? Then
Yes, it was. It was
Okay.
in the early 2000s. So then we ended up just doing purebred bulls for the next, 6-7 years. And then even that wasn't paying the bills. Like my dad was a mechanic, like a heavy duty mechanic, an oil field operator, and he ran the ranch. He has 5 kids. So
right.
Okay, yeah, and that seems to be par for the course. If you're involved in ag, you tend to have 1 or 3 or 5 jobs to kind of just keep everything rolling because it's such an up and down market, right?
Yeah. So where do you fall in the 5 kids then?
I'm second last.
Second last. Okay.
Yeah,
So
my brother's adopted.
okay.
Oh, okay.
So you've got brothers and sisters, a mix?
I got 3 older sisters and 1 younger brother.
Oh, dang. 3 older sisters. How was that growing up?
About what you'd expect, a lot of torture.
Okay. Okay. And how old's the oldest?
My oldest sister's 7 years older than me, and I'm 27.
Okay. Okay. So fairly good spread, or you're all kind of a couple of years apart sort of thing?
I was the accident. My parents will never admit to it, but like it was 7, 6, 4, gap, me.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
No.
Your dad was just like, okay, one more time. We're trying for a boy.
He was trying for a boy, but that was an accident. Yeah.
Man, yeah, he was probably, after 3 girls, you're kind of.
Well, and the other thing, like I know when we were talking with Charles Stewart there, his family's got 11 kids and not a huge agricultural operation, but I'm like, that's a lot of free labor, man.
Lots of free labor.
I'm like, yeah, you can get a lot done with 11 kids, man.
You don't got to pay any of them, so it's even better.
Yeah, just got to feed them.
Yeah, just feed them and keep them strong.
Yeah.
So how many, how long until you kind of moved off the ranch? Was that?
I was 18.
Oh, okay. So your dad was still actively doing it, and then you kind of.
The operation had gotten so small at that point. Like my dad still has some cattle, but it's really not. I'd say we have like 16 to 20, whereas back in the day we had 400.
Oh shit.
Okay, yeah, you're running a whole cow-calf operation.
Yeah,
man.
like that was like 400 head, not including calves in the season. Like,
and now he just does it because he likes to lose money.
Now he does it because essentially, and we eat some of them. So
well, I guess there's money in it now. I mean, the prices are up, and I know a few guys who have small operations who are, they're pretty happy now that they can make some money when they're taking stuff to auction, but they're kind of kicking themselves when they gotta get replacement heifers and stuff like that. It's up there, man.
It's just really disappointing because my dad was always really good at it. He just had really bad luck on some of the things. So which is what it is.
Are they still hanging on to the family ranch then, or have they since moved on?
The ranch we had in the valley was gone probably when I was 13, 14. We had to sell that when we moved out of the valley. Probably only, I think it's like 7 to 10K from where I grew up.
Okay.
It's on top of the bench.
Oh, okay.
And now that they live there, they still live there, and they've set it up mostly for raising their grandchildren.
Right.
Which is really nice. Like they got a swing set and a big yard and all this other stuff just to entertain their grandkids. Because like my one sister already has 5 kids.
Okay.
Oh, nice. And I love seeing that, man. When people there's a lot of people who sell, they either farming or ranching. Kids don't want to take it over. They sell. They move into town, and generations they lose this whole connection to. When I look at the West, that's part of who we are.
Yep.
Is agriculture, is ranching and stuff like that. It gets taken over by foreign entities, big factory farms. And it's, it's all well and good. It's putting groceries in the grocery store, but it's a loss of identity, I see. So when people keep going at that and getting to bring the kids out and the younger generations and kind of see where we came from as people in the West and that sort of lifestyle, I think there's a certain amount of good moral and good values that come from that just don't come from a city.
That's true.
I'm not saying there's bad, like the city's all bad people, but I just think there's a higher propensity of that kind of learning and that kind of values that come from that rural lifestyle. That's really, really important.
Lots of self-reliance. There isn't anybody around, so you have to learn to engage with yourself.
Yeah. And that ability to get up in the morning, go outside, and then just be gone all day. Right? When you're a kid and you just have room to roam and all kinds of trouble to get into, that is lost in a lot of young people now. Like they don't have that kind of freedom where I don't see parents now like, hey, my kid's 11 and he left at 9 o'clock
haven't
this
seen him
morning.
in 12 hours.
And as long as he's home for dinner, we don't care.
Yeah.
Like that kind of mentality doesn't exist outside of that rural lifestyle where kids are running around with 22s and on dirt bikes and
I miss that. I miss gopher hunting. If I miss anything up here if I missed anything about being in Grand Prairie I miss gopher hunting.
Yeah, we just don't have any gophers.
There's no gophers. What's up with that?
There's none north of the North Saskatchewan River.
No,
I don't know if it's the soil type or I'm not sure why that is.
For not the permafrost, but the frozen ground. It just gets too cold, and it's all swamp. So it's all muskeg. So
that's true too.
We got muskrats, lots of muskrats, beavers,
There's
skunks.
lots of other things to shoot.
Skunks are making their way up here, from what I hear.
Oh, there's been skunks up here forever.
Oh yeah, I've never seen one north of like the Edson area.
Oh yeah, 20 years ago when I first moved up here and I was hunting, I'd see skunks. I'd see one or two every fall.
Yeah, I'd run into them a lot down in southern Alberta, like literally with a vehicle. But yeah, back in the old days, my old man had this big 4x4 camper van. We'd take that thing like all over Western Canada, and it had like the foot vents. So you'd open these vents on the floor to let the air flow through the van. And run over a few skunks in that thing, and it just all starts coming up through the vents. Makes for fun road trips.
Do you see yourself in the future? Like, do you miss it enough? Do you think about like getting an acreage or getting a farm or getting into that, or not really?
I don't. At the current rate, I don't think I'd ever leave Alberta,
right,
unless it was to move to the States.
Okay.
But Alberta is, I think, the last bastion of Canadians in Canada.
Sure.
I agree with you 100%. There's some people in northeastern in BC.
Every province you can go, there's people.
Yeah.
Like I know people from BC who would fit that bill. I know people from Northern Ontario who would fit that bill. Lots of people from Saskatchewan. Yeah. I just think Alberta as a culture is the last place that's still putting up a fight for Canadian values and just being a Canadian overall.
Yeah, and I think for myself, like we've had conversations about that, what is Canadian identity? And I think sometimes because I've lived in Alberta my whole life. I'm born in Alberta, lived here my whole life, traveled all across Canada, got family from coast to coast, literally from coast to coast. And I think of Alberta as closer to that old school Canadian mentality than I do the other places in Canada that I go, because they're all bigger and more metropolitan, or super, super progressive, or really tied into like, media and government.
And I'm sure people from other places, they feel the same way. Like, we're the last of the Canadians. Like, but
that's just from my experience around Canada. Alberta's a place where people in general, because you can't use blanket statements for everywhere. Because like you go downtown Edmonton, you're going to run into the same people you run into downtown Toronto.
For sure.
Just the fact of Alberta still believes that we should be able to work and make a living and provide for our families and be left alone, which I think is what I believe is core to being Albertan.
Sure. I would like to think that there's some move towards a smaller government, although our government doesn't ever think so. The first thing they always say when they go to get elected, they're like, we're going to shrink the size of the government and cut taxes. And the first thing they do is like open 6 new departments so the government raise taxes.
That's right.
But what are you going to do? That's their nature. So at what point did you go to like a post-secondary, or what point
did a year of Bible college in Miller.
Oh, okay. Again, we have this is a common thing for some odd reason with our guests on this podcast. There's a connection to Christianity or religion in a way that goes slightly deeper than casual or pedestrian. There's a lot of people that have sat in that chair that have gone to Bible college.
I just don't see, like, not Bible college being that important. I just mean, I think that is part of Canadian values. I think that we were built on that. I think we've walked away from that a lot.
Oh, 100%.
So were you raised religious then? Like your parents, like church every Sunday kind of thing?
As much as we could when work allowed. Yeah.
Okay. So was the plan to become a pastor or go into the church, or was that just something?
My mom would love if I said yes to that, but absolutely not. No. All I wanted to do since I was a kid, I wanted to join the military and I wanted to go fight bullies.
Nice.
That was what I wanted to do since I was like 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was the Bible college thing then, was that kind of...
Oh, they hated that.
Your parents did?
No. The Bible college was, it was definitely a push by my parents. I don't regret going.
Okay.
They wanted me to go. I did. And it was a good experience.
Yeah.
But I was never going to be a pastor.
Just didn't fit in the mold.
I'm not like, I don't even know the right way to put this. The church that, especially when I was going up to, because like I did some ministry while I was in Bible college.
Yeah.
Like we would go out and help in churches in like Swift Current.
Oh, okay.
And
old Speedy Creek.
Yeah.
Home of our own culture wall.
Yeah. Even there. But I would talk to guys there. Even the pastors would come up to me because like my plan was to actively join the military at that point. I was 19, and they would come and tell me how wrong I was for wanting to do that. Because
I see.
it was the classic "thou shalt not kill." It's just a mistranslation because it's "thou shalt not murder," and there's a very different thing between those two.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot has been said, especially recently, about the role of masculinity in the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's kind of a hot topic right now in a lot of denominations of Christianity.
Well, I think his broad picture, they're starting to get stuck with the realization that you either bring back some masculinity in the church or you'll disappear. You'll cease to exist because somebody has to fight for it.
Yeah, and I think you see a little bit, maybe in some of the more southern states, you'd probably see a little bit more leadership on the masculine side, like with I think that might be because of the U.S. spirit of kind of strength through service, where going out to serve is not something that's weak, right? You're doing it from a position of strength, and they've got a much higher.
Well, even their constitution is based on it.
Yeah, there's a much higher percentage of people who served in the military and stuff like that, and their faith is very, very much ingrained in that. Canada, we've kind of had that eroded away over time.
Well, because we're a colony, right? The king is superior.
Yes.
So it's a whole different set of politics.
Yeah, and as much as I think Canadians, don't think about themselves as being a colony of Great Britain, I think there's still that colonial mindset where people have this.
Alberta is still a colony.
Yeah, Canada, well, people seem to have this. I think it's a subconscious thing where they don't want to go against government, whereas in the U.S. they're like, the government says like, hey, we're gonna do this, and even if it's a good thing, people are like, fuck that, right? We're gonna stand, and you're not doing that, and they're like, hold on a second, like there's this natural inclination to push back against authority, whereas in Canada we have this, I like to. Recently, I was talking about it as it's almost an idea that where government is parental, where it's like it's daddy government, and government wants what's best for us, and you don't push back against the government. You might quietly bitch over your Tim Hortons coffee about what's going on, but you really won't do anything about it because I think government knows best.
Yeah, that's very true. I saw that in the military, so I think that's very true.
Yeah. So when did it become like a hard and fast thing where you were gonna enlist?
I had always wanted to, and I was coming out of Bible college, and I had told people going through high school that I was going to join the military, and I was a year out of high school because that was my year. And I was like, I can't go against my word. I had already told people this is what I was going to do. I had to bite the bullet, and I had to do it. So I did it. I worked in the oil field I worked until I was 20 or 21, and then I joined the military.
So that's 2018, 2019?
I joined in 2018. I got out in 2022.
Okay. So what's the process? You ditch Bible college, or you finish the year kind of thing, and then
I was working in the oil field before I went to Bible college.
Okay,
and then I did my 2 semesters of Bible college, went back into the oil field. I bought my first house when I was 19, and then I still actually own that house. It's in Saskatchewan, and then I worked for a couple more years and decided I was just pushing off what I actually wanted to do.
Right.
So I signed up to join the military, and I swore in, I think in August, and I was gone in September.
Okay.
Something like that.
So how does that, is that like a generic thing? Like, how do you sign up? Like, what's the process?
Go to like
pick up the
forces.ca.
Yeah, forces.ca. Okay. You fill out the application, you get a call. You have to do all your forms, background checks, all the things. Before that, you have to do your CFAT, Canadian Forces Aptitude Test. I don't know if they've changed that since I went through.
Okay.
But yeah, I had to go into Regina because you had to go to your nearest recruiting office, which was Regina for me. And you fill out your CFAT, which is just a general aptitude test. And what you score on that determines what you can be in.
Okay.
So if you're dumb and strong, you carry a machine gun.
Ideally, yeah. Or you become a bosun.
Right.
The bosons are going to hate that. But the major who swore me in was super mad at me because I scored higher than he did on the CFAT, and he was a major in the Air Force or something.
Right.
He's like, you can be all these things. You could be this with spec pay, and you can go to the Air Force and do this, or you can go to the Navy and do this. I said, no, I want to be a ground pounder. I want to be infantry.
Yeah.
He was like, no, you don't. They get paid the least. They get treated the worst. All these other things you're qualified.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Do. And I'm looking back on it. I should have gone in the Air Force, but but I say that, but I don't regret the infantry at all. I regret what the infantry became, but I wouldn't change that experience, especially the beginning of it, for anything. I loved it. I hated it, but I loved it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you're not supposed to like it.
It was, looking back on it, is some of the best memories to talk about later.
Sure, and
the
that's
time you thought you were going to die.
That's what suffering is, right?
Yeah,
it's good stories for later.
It's fun.
Yeah.
So you sign up, you go through the test there, and you decide you want to be in the infantry, and then what's the time between?
That was probably 3 months from when I did my CFAT. Had that whole application process. Then they called me back. I went back home. Down to Southwest Saskatchewan, and I worked for a couple more months, got the call, this is your swear-in date, this is your deployment date.
So do you already know what you've been selected and where, like what you're going to do? 3
options.
Okay.
I don't remember what my third option was, but I chose infantry and combat engineer, and I don't remember what my third one was. I got infantry.
Yeah.
And then you went back to Regina, you did your swear-in with your family, and pledge allegiance, and then a couple weeks later to a month later, they shipped me off to St. John, Quebec.
Okay. And what was that like?
That was an experience.
I bet.
And so this is boot camp.
This is basic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they call it boot camp or they call it basic? What do they
basic.
call it? Okay.
What is it? There's an acronym
it's
for
like
it.
BMQ or something like that.
BMQ, basic military qualification.
Yeah.
But the school was called CFLRS, and it's Canadian Forces Leadership something or other. We called it syphilis because it sounds like a disease.
Of course.
And it was actually, it was built to be like a maximum security prison or something to start with, and then they changed it in the building process to be a military base because the people, this is all going to be hearsay. Like, there's going to be so many caveats to, like, somebody might have.
For sure.
A lot of this is going to be military.
That's the great thing about the internet is no one cares what you say on the internet. No one's going to correct us at all.
Oh, right.
This is as you understand it.
This is as I understand it, and I have no ill intent with the way I'm saying things.
You betcha.
But it was called the Mega, and it was this ugly, angular building. Like, it's built like a zigzag.
Okay.
And it was color-coded. It had terrible ventilation. And they had to color-code it because it was built so similar in all of its different sections. It was meant to be painted gray so that if a prisoner got out of one area, they would be confused as to where they were. They painted them different colors, and we would still get confused as to where we were.
Nice. It sounds like a perfect military building.
It was actually, it was an experience.
So how long does that last?
Mine was 13 weeks.
Okay.
Apparently they've shortened it down to 8 now or something.
And what does that consist of? Like, what's your initial, from the time you get there, you're in dock to, your day to day for that 13 weeks?
When I went through, it was kind of a shock of military culture. Like, you get picked up by a guy in CAD-PAT from the airport. And which it's just all interesting because, like, I didn't know this until I got out of the military, how much the military changed me as a person. Because going into it, you're on a bus with a whole bunch of people just like you who have no idea what they're getting into. You have a couple people who are cadets, and they honestly did the worst out of everybody else because they thought they knew what they were getting into, and then they didn't.
Oh, okay.
They're like, it's just like the cadets, and then it wasn't.
No, because the whole purpose is to kind of break you down a little bit, to strip
break
away all that identity a little bit.
Rebuild you back up.
Yeah.
Right. I had some really good instructors. I had a couple master bombardiers. I had some POs from the Navy, and like a whole bunch of, I had a couple sergeants from RCR, and one was PPCLI, and the one guy had stacked bodies. Like, he was...
You've been there.
Oh, he had been there.
Yeah.
That was the best change going from basic to infantry school, was just the difference in, like, in basic, you get taught 2 to the chest, 1 to the head.
Sure.
And then you run up and deliver aid immediately. That's the basic way.
Right.
Infantry school was like 2 to the chest, 2 to the head, 5 more as you walk by because you don't know.
Makes sense.
Your
Everything to
job's
the everywhere.
move through the area. And
it's I can't be dealing with that. He could be a threat. I don't want to pick his gun back up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, makes sense.
So what are you doing in that 13 weeks? Is it like physical fitness? Like you're learning basic, like what does it even look like?
So there's PT every day, obviously. I would say twice a day, but it doesn't really matter because PT is
all day.
Could be at any point during the day. Like you could just not even screw up, but you always screw up something.
Yeah.
And now you're doing PT. Like that's just what it is. So it was a lot of PT, a lot of drill, a lot of classes. Like we learned like basic nav and like rules of engagement. And then there was some like a lot of weapons drills once you get, because you don't get your rifle until like week 5 or something or 6.
Okay.
And then you have to qualify on your rifle, and all the drills were weird. Like they were not gunfighter drills. They were like
lowest common denominator drills.
It wasn't even that. It was a bunch of guys who never shot a rifle teaching other people how to shoot a rifle. Like outside of the military context. It was like you switch hands and run the charging handle with this hand, and it was just a whole bunch of stuff that was just, it wasn't ergonomic at all, but it was by the book.
Yeah, and I think Lucas can probably speak to this. I know I've seen it on courses where we've had people with CF experience come in, and instructors are instructing in a certain way, and they're like, "Well, I learned it this way." It's like, "Well, you learned it the big green army way."
Yeah, which is fine, because you have to kind of like everybody has to learn somehow somewhere. One thing I do notice about most, at least everyone I've interacted with from the CAF over the years, whether they're a student of mine or I'm a student of theirs, is that they're very open-minded and they take instruction well. They don't like. That's just been my experience. Whether it's overwhelmingly positive as far as like, because if you ask them like, why are you doing that? They're like, I don't know. That's how I was taught. You're like, oh, okay. Well, have you thought about doing it this way? They're like, oh shit, that makes sense. And they can they're very adaptable for the most part. So it's not, because I tell people like, you can be wrong your whole life and still be wrong. Yeah. Right? So, and I give an example of like, you can be, maybe you're the guy that drives and you never shoulder check, right? Yeah. You just check your mirror and you just give her. And maybe you get away with it for a long time, but then that one time where you smash into a car, so you were wrong your whole life and you're still wrong. Yeah. Right. And running a rifle is the same thing. You can get away with a lot until you don't. So
you can not switch that safety on every transition and get away with it 1,000 times, and one day it will bite you in the ass.
Literally press one off into your own leg, or
well, I've seen,
or just ND. Nothing scarier to anyone in the military than an ND.
Oh, nothing scarier at any point ever, man. You want to see everything just stop on the line and everybody look.
Who did that?
What the hell? Okay, it's always the most switched on.
That's when you flip it back off safe, fire 4 more, and make it look like you did it on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
So is it kind of like was it Full Metal Jacket, like with the gunny?
Arlie Emery just screaming at you.
Is the Canadian Forces is pretty chill compared to that?
Compared to the depiction in Full Metal Jacket, sure. I would say it's very different. We didn't have like the shark attack drill sergeants. Okay. That being said, there was shark attack moments, but you only ever saw it from the combat trades.
Okay.
Because like you have a whole plethora of instructors, and I shouldn't say that because I'm sure there's POs and stuff who did the same.
Sure.
From my own personal experience, the guys who would get after you the hardest were like your RD guys, your Chimos, your infantry guys. Like they would all be way more loud, rambunctious, like you're on your face doing push-ups for no reason. You're doing burpees until someone throws up. Like
they just want to ramp up the intensity.
Yeah.
And did you find that, as time went on, that's a function of how they were raised up in the military? Yes. So they just wanted to like, hey man, that's how we did it. So that's how you're going to get it.
Yeah. Okay. I got a little tiny taste of it in basic, because basic overall is quite easy. If you understand that it's a game, because all basic is a game.
Sure.
You never pass. I learned more of this in infantry school. Like you can pass inspections when they want you to pass inspections, but a lot of the times, especially in infantry school, it was like your toothbrush is wet because you just brushed your teeth with it. And that was 3.5 minutes ago. And now they're just going to take it, throw it at the wall, flip your bed, and now you're doing burpees until someone throws up.
Yeah,
like, that was the whole point of the inspection. Was you were just going to do burpees until they just cut to the chase rather than inspecting.
Well, and really, I guess it's kind of like you said, it's kind of a game, and the goal is if somebody can't handle that little bit of pressure, that's not the guy you want with you anyway.
It's attention to detail and trying to inoculate you to stress.
Sure.
Because like there's 100 different things you have to do. You have to clean the barracks. You have to make sure every part on your rifle is spotless. Your bed has to be measured like with a ruler.
Oh,
yeah, square corners.
All the sheets and stuff, and everything has to be taut. And like you have to hospital fold your corners and all this stuff. And all of these things are just adding up to the fact like you have to do all this attention to detail among the overarching threat of if you screw this up, everybody suffers.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's a level of agency. One of the things I notice about training young people professionally is there's a level of they have this level of agency where it's kind of like, I don't have to do that because I don't want to do that. And one of the things that they're going to get rid of in any kind of training like the military is to remove that agency, where it's like how you feel doesn't matter. The things that need to get done are going to get done, and you're going to get them done or everybody's going to suffer.
I think you articulated that really well, and I think that's what the Army has lost, and that's why it's such a shit organization now.
Yeah, I could see that, because the moment we start to cater to the individual,
exactly,
you're going to lose this ability to, and that's what I try and tell people. It's like how you feel. Like, I get it. You come to work and you had a bad morning or whatever. You're sad, and that, there's the millennials that kind of come through and you, like, it doesn't matter. Like, how you feel doesn't affect me at all, right? What needs to get done still needs to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do it whether you like it or not, because that's what your job is. And you cannot do it, then you don't have the job.
Mm-hmm.
But the sooner you realize that, your agency, it kind of ends a little bit at the edge of the organization. Like, and I think that's like that with relationships. Is like, if I'm in my marriage with my wife and there's things that need to get done around the house, but I don't feel like doing them, so they just don't get done, and she's like, what the hell? How come you're not doing what needs to get done? And you're like, I just don't feel like it.
Well, sure. And even from a military context, which I'm speaking from the historical, like, research level, not from actual experience, but I mean, if your job and your teammates is to push the left flank and you don't feel like it,
yeah,
then how do you win, right? Like, if you got two people on the team who are like, well, I don't feel like, I'm not running up that hill.
It's like, Bravo. No, it's Charlie, take the trench. Yeah, it's always Charlie team who takes the trench. But you have to be willing to realize that you're a part of a bigger organization and with bigger goals. Yeah. You are a cog. And I don't know how this occurred, because even when I went through, like, I don't consider myself to be one of the real war fighters. Like, you were talking about your cousin, I think, at the start.
Yeah.
The guys who went to Afghanistan, like, the guys who taught me were the real war fighters. I never got
the 05 to 015 crew,
or even before. Like, the guys who went to Bosnia went through some shit.
Oh yeah,
they sure did.
And then, like, you go back, you've got Korea, you've got all the stuff we don't talk about from our special forces side of things. You got throughout our history, we have a super rich Canadian military history.
Yep.
And I'm super proud to even be considered a part of that organization at any point, even though now it is not even a shadow of what it was. But it's just, I don't know how it got to where it is, because even me going through, I never got to deploy to a combat zone. I got to fight fires in BC. Like, I'm nobody. I don't claim to be anybody. Even I had the understanding, and so did all of the guys I trained with, all the guys I got to battalion with, all believed that we were small parts of a big machine, that, like, we didn't think our lives were disposable, but they were under a certain context. Like, if Charlie team has to take the trench, you have to do it whether or not there's bullets coming.
Right.
And my biggest regret in life is I never got to find out if I actually had the balls or the stomach to see if I had, because, like, nobody's prepared for combat till you do combat.
Sure.
And that's what you're training for, right?
That's what I was
spending all that time doing it. Yeah.
All I desperately wanted to do
Yeah.
was I wanted to know, because maybe I'm the guy who gets shot at and I piss myself and curl up into a ball. I don't know.
I don't think so,
but like, you don't know. Like, some of the most switched on best guys,
they may have had piss themselves in a whole moment.
Maybe.
Right.
I just mean, like, the guys who you think might be the coolest under pressure, because all the pressure up to that point had never got to them, but that's that one thing that throws them over the edge, and now they're useless.
Yep.
And then you have that other guy who rises to the occasion, who's been shit the whole time, and now he gets to step up in that moment where everything's going horribly, and you see the other side of people. That's one of the things I felt so robbed of when my time in the military ended the way that it did, was because my opportunity to find out about myself was taken away from me because of the bastards who are in charge now.
Right.
Yeah. So let's.
I got one more question just about
I didn't mean to take it there.
About basic. No, that's fine. Did you actually have anybody in kind of in that in-doc phase that kind of self-selected right away? Did you have anybody who kind of, you know, in your group, or did you see anybody when they kind of came into it who were just like, no, this isn't for me, or just kind of had ultimate breakdowns and just like,
there's a few key examples I can think of where I didn't quite understand it, because I thought basic was quite easy. That is not going to be like a blanket experience. Everyone experiences basic differently.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing or the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah, exactly. And even like, I think a lot of people just can't separate what's going on right now from what it's going to be in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the worst 5 minutes of my life, but it's still only 5 minutes of my life.
Yeah. I'm wet and cold right now, and this really sucks.
It's kind of like that. Cause like people broke down, like I've seen people break down and cry. Like people throw up that. Throwing up is not a bad thing. Like I've thrown up many a time in PT.
I understand that puke runs are a real thing in the military.
I've thrown up while running.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't stop running. You still have to run. You're just throwing up. But I remember my fire team partner, his name was Eric. I'm not going to say his last name. He was a cadet, and he was the exception to the rule. He was super switched on. He was a sick guy. He was my fire team partner. I felt like we had the most overpowered fire team in our course. It was sick. The guy was always on the ball. Nothing ever cracked him. He was sick. Oh, we were out in Farnham, which is like one of your 2.5 weeks out in the field when you're out in Quebec.
Okay.
And like, for context, we're carrying rifles with blanks in them.
Yeah.
With BFAs on, we're walking in formation down roads, and everyone's tired because this is your first real, like if you haven't done it civvy side, this is your first real sleep deprivation that most of us had ever done. That was the first time in my life that I've been up for 3 days.
Was it winter or summer?
It was fall turning winter.
Oh, okay.
And so you're patrolling?
Yeah, we were patrolling.
Kind of, and how big is it? Like in a platoon size element, or
it was almost always a platoon size element in basic.
And how many guys are in a platoon? Is that 30?
It varies on how much is on your course. I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh, I suppose, yeah.
Normally you got, well, in a mechanized section, you got like 10 to 12 in a section.
Right.
If you're including your like vehicle crew, and then you just times that by 4.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a static number, but like 40s. Sure. We'll go 40 a platoon, but
okay.
For a training context,
it's however many they got.
It's however many you got.
Yeah.
Breaks you up in how many sections of how many you have.
Cool.
It's supposed to be 40 and 10s, and then you have 4 sections per platoon per company, and then 4 platoons per company.
Right.
Like that kind of thing. But I remember we were on patrol, and they were firing at us with an empty paintball gun. There wasn't even paintballs. It was just the sound.
It's that bad, hey? They just can't even afford paintballs?
No. It was just the trainingism. Like it was just to add adversity to all of these sleep deprived, big children, which were walking through the woods. I include myself in that.
Oh yeah.
Just
to ramp up the stress.
Yeah. So they're firing a paintball. You know when somebody fires a paintball gun upside down, that noise?
Yeah.
That was the noise from the trees on the left side.
Yeah.
And I watched. How many of us were out there at the time? Probably like 24 of us, not including instructors. I watched everybody but myself and my fire team partner just stop.
Okay. Not advisable.
Like everyone got into the ditch.
Yeah.
And then they just didn't move.
What do we do?
It was exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So I think I was section leader. What was that? Course senior. That was the term.
Okay.
I was course senior, and he was my 2IC at the time.
Right.
And I'm yelling back to him, and he's yelling back to me. I'm like, hey, we got to push up because we got to assault that fucking hill.
Yeah, you counter ambush.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm yelling at him. I'm like, hey, let's go. We got to push up. And they're just staring at me. It's just eyes, just glazed.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm like, So Eric and I just start grabbing people by the collars and just moving them.
Yeah.
And it was just weird because like we had to move, I think probably the first like 8 people manually before anybody else like picked it up and started going.
Oh, wow.
And it was just seeing the shutdown was so, I remember in the moment thinking this was weird, and looking back on it, it was like, we were tired, but like it was a clear night with an obvious paintball gun firing from the left side, which we knew we were walking into.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on a patrol to contact drill, right? Like,
Yes, exactly.
This is what we're training for. It's
something
going to happen.
Something was going to happen. And just the fact that we had to move them manually, like thank God Eric was there because I couldn't have done that by myself.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was just watching that happen. And there was several smaller instances of that particular thing happening just throughout like the whole administrative side of BASIC as well. When people just shut down, but people shut down all the time. And then a lot of them would slowly get exited from the military.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully like, you know, some of them get better. They go, oh, okay,
no,
I've had that experience. I've been inoculated a little bit to stress. So next time this happens.
Exactly. And the next time that happened, it wasn't near as bad.
Yeah.
Like you still have your same culprits who are probably, a lot of them aren't even going to go into a job that relates, because everybody goes through BASIC.
Yeah.
Like your pencil pushers and everybody go through BASIC.
Yeah. The guys who clean the kitchen or
Yeah,
clean
yeah,
up the
that
mess
makes
hall.
sense,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
So like a lot of it doesn't even matter. Like,
so was Eric then, was he also signed up, like he was infantry? Is that where he was
Eric
headed to?
Wasn't infantry. He was a mat tech.
What the hell's that?
Materials technician. They like
okay.
do a lot of stuff with their hands, which is great for him. He was really, he should have been infantry or some combat trade. He was really good.
Okay.
But he wanted to be a mat tech, and I'm sure he's a great mat tech.
Yeah. Pick up some skills, and
a
a lot of people do that, right? They'll
you
do
get a
their
lot
4
of valuable
years.
stuff out of being a mat tech, like your weldings, like
Yeah.
welding, like they learn.
Well,
how to sew
welding is
stuff.
one of the most important trades on planet Earth.
Oh,
just
yeah.
ask
just,
me.
just ask me how I know.
Ask me how I know it.
Actually, funny aside, I was working on a current project where they're like, they're going to bring this whole crew to build this building. And then they decided that they're like, no, we won't bring that crew in. This one welder is going to put it all together by himself.
That's right.
I'm like, leave it to one Northern Alberta welder to like steal a job from an entire company.
Man, savings though.
Yeah, well, we had to bring them in anyway. That welder was too busy. But
It's how it goes.
I just chuckled to myself. I'm like, you're just going to put it on one Northern Alberta welder. This like steals a whole project from an entire company.
Damn, that's a lot of overtime.
So you get through BASIC. Was there any other big highlights through BASIC, or you kind of?
BASIC was a lot of drill. My first time doing sleep dep was definitely memorable.
Sure.
Because I had never stayed up for 3 days in a row before, and I'm sure it wasn't a full 36 hours. I'm sure it was more like 30.
Yeah.
But it felt like a long time, and that was the first time I ever hallucinated from sleep deprivation.
What
My
was that
first
like?
and only time hallucinating during sleep deprivation.
Okay.
I saw floating figures coming towards me as I was trying to go to the bathroom. It was just like, yeah,
Dang.
it was interesting. I fell asleep while walking,
Okay.
and I woke up while walking, so that was at least a good thing. I didn't wake up on my face.
Just
Like,
micro
oh, cool, I got a little
napping. Yeah.
Yeah,
At
that was
least, at least you were driving.
exactly. I was walking patrols on a patrol base, and it was actually a fob. They had a pre-set up fob that you would do for this particular drill in BASIC, that you would show up and man the fob. And I was walking patrols around it, me and my fire team partner, and I fell asleep while walking and woke up at the next corner. Like that whole that whole one wall. I walked and woke up at the other side and was like, geez, I feel a little bit more refreshed.
I wonder if I can get another one on this next this next wall. FOB, Forward Operating Base, FOB, for anybody that's not in with the lingo.
Yeah, the military has a love of acronyms.
Yeah, I'm sure I've lost more about acronyms than I'll ever learn again, but
Yeah, you don't use them in like the
regular life.
In regular life, yeah.
Yeah.
So you complete that and that's in Quebec,
Mhm.
and then where do you move to after that?
I went. Different people go different places. I went to Wainwright
Okay.
after that, Wainwright, Alberta, to my DP1.
Yeah.
Which is what infantry school is called. It's called a DP1 or battle school, depending on who's teaching you. The older guys had battle school, so you'll hear a lot of that lingo. Interchanged. Yeah. So we went to battle school, and I was really lucky because the pipeline for me was I got there in December, and I started my DP1 in January,
Okay.
which was awesome. So like I got to go home for Christmas, which is unheard of, and then I got to show up, go back to infantry school, and that's when we did our hand-to-hand training first, and then we do our remaining 12 weeks.
What does the Canadian military hand-to-hand training or combatives course, what does that entail?
Hardcore MMA, Muay Thai, and BJJ.
I don't know what it involves now, but when I went through, it was you get beasted in the morning, then you go to breakfast, then you go to your combatives, and I think you do combatives for about a week and a half, about 9-ish, 10 days. Okay. And you do like neck breaking, sentry takedowns, some practical striking.
Like sentry takes, like the old school slip up behind, put your hand over their mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And up between the floating ribs.
No. We go in behind the clavicle.
Oh yeah, there you go.
You go down, and
I think the floating. Style. I think that's a Israeli thing up between the floating ribs.
That could be.
If you go, well, we got taught it was the quietest way to do it because the whole across the throat thing is a movieism.
Yeah.
Because if you're actually going to slit someone's throat, I haven't done it. This is what my instructor I'm sure has. So you go in the back closer to the spine, and you go out the front.
That makes sense.
But he always said not to do that because it's too loud. There's a lot of gasping and gurgling noises.
Sure.
Whereas if you go in behind your collarbone and down, you just turn your knife. Making soup.
Yeah. Cutting up arteries
and then there's no noise because you're covering their mouth, which I did not realize how effective it was. If you have big hands, and it's really effective. I didn't know that.
Someone should do a freedom of information request for Canadian Forces knife kills.
That would be cool.
I want to know.
That would be cool to know.
It's got to be out there somewhere.
You do a lot of practical striking, just in regards to like you're always wearing body armor.
Yeah.
So
right.
You're not doing like flying, spinning kicks or nothing.
Yeah. Right.
It's what can you do while wearing body armor?
Yeah.
And then there's like compliance techniques and
wrist locks and
that kind of stuff. Just things.
Joint locks and takedowns.
Ways to immobilize like potential HVTs and hold them on the ground while you can still use your rifle. Yeah. Like chicken winning someone and putting your knees under them.
Yeah.
So if they fight you, you can dislocate their shoulders.
Yep.
But you can still run your rifle with both hands.
Yep.
Just stuff like that. It was all meant to be very practical. Like no one comes out of it I would say even an amateur in any specific martial art.
No, but when you came out of did you feel like you could handle yourself?
More than when I went in. Sure. I think it was actually the most beneficial part of that course was the least fun part of that course.
Sure.
Because the whole thing was a lot of just getting the shit kicked out of you and also just being really tired because like you do PT before breakfast and then before lunch and then like after you get back from lunch and then before you leave. Like it's a huge beasting process.
Yeah.
And it's actually the reason they do that is so that people don't hurt each other because you're always fighting when you're sparring with each other or when you're doing that kind of stuff. You're always at like 50% of
you're spent already
because you're just so tired.
Yeah, it's anybody who trains on the mats has faced the brand new energetic white belt. Oh man, like this guy's gonna hurt me bad.
I just need to survive until we get to like the 3rd to 5th round, and he's tired.
And then you got two fresh guys that are just getting after it. You're like, man, like somebody's probably gonna die over there.
Something's getting dislocated or broken.
I think there's value in that level of training too, though, where you're fatigued because the reality is if you you assault up the hill or you infilled at night and you walked all day and you finally get to the objective and have to actually fight it out, like you probably will be fatigued anyways. So
exactly. And like that was all really good. And like I did learn some stuff. There's some stuff that I haven't had to use most of it, obviously, but like I have had to use some of it in my life throughout.
Yeah.
And it was really, it was good training because I retained a lot of it.
Yeah.
The last part of it is scenario day. And from what I understand, scenario day in Wainwright versus scenario day in, where do they train? In Pet, I think they train. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Petawawa.
The East Coast base where they do the other infantry school. I don't know. Wasn't there. Don't know where they do it. But our scenario day was you get like an MMA helmet, you get your frag vest with no plates in it, and you get some really thin MMA gloves.
Yeah.
And there's this whiteboard outside the room that they put tallies beside, but the names are like bleeders, sex noises, criers, screamers, quitters, And then if they could make anybody do any of these things, sex noises is one. And they put tallies beside whoever makes the noise.
And,
So
the betting pool is probably heavy from the
on the instructor side. Yeah, absolutely.
So the goal is to not be on the board, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't think they did for my course. I don't remember exactly. But sometimes they played music. They just didn't play Disney music. The course before mine, they played Disney music while they beat the shit out of people.
Like Let It Go and stuff like that.
But anyways, the gist of it is you go in front of this room and you do burpees until they can tell that you're tired enough. Then they send you into the room with 2 instructors, and you're supposed to de-escalate the situation.
Yeah.
The goal is the instructors were never going to de-escalate. It was never on the table.
No, and you know that because you're wearing headgear.
Well,
what do I need this for?
Apparently, I was told by my buddy I was in battalion with that he trained on the East Coast, and he said he could de-escalate it. Like, he went in, made both guys laugh, and he got to move to the next round.
Wasn't an option in the West.
It wasn't an option in the West.
No, you're getting your ass kicked one way or the other.
I went into this room. After the best part is I put my MMA helmet on because this is all shared stuff.
Sure.
So I put on my MMA helmet and I look up as I'm putting it on, and blood starts running down the side of my face, and it was all sweaty and bloody inside when I put it on.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, so this is what this is going to be like.
My first staph infection.
So I go walking in I remember thinking I was going to piss myself so bad. I peed like 4 times before I went in there. I was like, I just don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy who pees when he's getting the shit kicked out of him, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I go in there, and it's 2 instructors who are both immensely better and fitter than me in all regards to martial arts. And I go in there, and the one guy's just trying to, classic bar fight, like, just trying to egg me on, trying to come up, push me, and I'm just like, hey man, no, we don't need to do this. Like, we can be cool. Like, we can talk it out with whoever. Trying to de-escalate the situation. Meanwhile, the other instructor tried to tabletop me as his opening move. Which was just an interesting strategy, but whatever. So I took a step back, felt him behind me, and just stepped to the side and had the other instructor trip over the other instructor and end up in a big ball on the ground, which was super funny, but also really didn't bode well going after that because now they were both embarrassed.
Yep.
And they were both fighting me.
Yep.
Now you're going to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just getting punched in the face a lot. I'm taking some kicks to the ribs, but I'm mostly just getting punched in the face. And I'm just trying to not have 2 people, I just didn't want anybody behind me.
Right.
If I was getting hit in the face, even by both of them, at least they're both in front of me and I can do stuff.
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm doing this dodge, and I was really tired already. And these things are only like 3 minutes per. But in my infinite wisdom, I'm like, well, I'm getting hit in the face a lot. Maybe I should just try to tackle them both because they got really close together. So I tackled both these guys.
Bold move.
Idiot move. I tackled both these guys, and I get both of them to the ground. But now I'm on the ground with 2 guys who are less tired than me and also better than me.
Yeah.
So it ended up like the last, I don't know how long it actually was of the 3 minutes of one guy with his elbow in my throat, hammer fisting me, while the other guy was just knee dropping my leg.
Oh,
in
lovely.
the back.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was just trying to shove one guy off and hit him, and then shove one guy off and hit him. And then they just swap out for another guy. Like, they walk out the room, another guy walks in with a taser knife, and you just got to reset.
And at this point, like, you're not
Good
even,
times.
are you assigned to a battalion at this point?
No, you're not.
Okay, so you're not even doing it for the battalion. You're just getting a beating. So
you don't belong to anybody. This is pre DP1. They used to do it at the end.
Yeah.
But too many people would get hurt, so they started doing them before.
Okay.
So that's why we did ours first.
Soften you up a little bit. I'm gonna imagine though, if you're getting that kind of attention, they probably like you.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, they swap out for a guy with a taser knife, which is just a polymer knife with electrodes on the sides.
Yep.
One of the guys on our course got it shoved up his ass, which thank God it wasn't me.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Once again, my strategy in that moment was hold on to the taser knife.
Yeah.
Like just on the wrist. I was a farmer, so I had good grip strength, right?
Yeah.
So I could keep the knife away from me, but meanwhile, the other hand was free, and I was just getting punched in the face a lot. So
you're not getting stabbed with the taser knife.
But I'm not getting stabbed. That's right.
So are those guys wearing headgear too? Like, are you allowed to punch them as well?
Oh yeah, you're fighting back.
Oh, so they're down to party.
This is a fight. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the rule was 70% to the head, 100% out the rest of the body. Not that it made a difference when you sent a bunch of tired ass privates in to fight instructors. Like
you're punching what you got.
Except for my fire team partner who I had in infantry school, a different guy, obviously different trade. He was like a 240-pound professional MMA guy.
Oh shit.
Yeah, he was scary. I'm sure he was scary to fight. Like
the instructor's like, oh shit.
Yeah, so I think they
let him de-escalate.
Yeah.
You know,
they're de-escalating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was a monster, absolute monster. For me though, just regular dude, getting the shit kicked out of me essentially, and I'm fighting back. And then he just swaps out for another guy, and he just comes in just all fisticuffs, and kicked him in the ribs a lot because I had reach on him. He was smaller than me.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That makes sense.
I kept trying to hit him, and I was too slow, so I'd get hit a lot. So I just kept taking a step back, kicking him in the ribs.
Well, there you go.
I had reach, so
you wrap up your Malay combatives, and then when do you ship out to battalion?
12 weeks later.
Okay, and that is you ended up in Wainwright.
I went from Wainwright to 1st Battalion, which is in Edmonton.
Okay, and was that a choice to go PPCLI?
It was for me, which I chose 1st Battalion. I got a couple of awards on my course, which meant I got a little bit of preferential treatment when I got to pick battalions.
Okay.
But in hindsight, I don't know if hindsight's 2020, but the majority of my friends who I graduated with all didn't have a choice and got to go to VP, which is in Shiloh, Manitoba.
Yep.
And if you were to ask my younger self where I would have rather have gone, I would have rather gone to 2 with all my boys.
Sure.
Than to 1, basic. Like there was a couple of us who went to 1, but everybody put in for 1 because you're in Edmonton and it's just a supposedly better place, and Shiloh's a shithole, and I'm sure they would still stand by that. But I just wanted to go with my boys. Obviously, looking back on it now, like my whole life happened because of where I was and what I am now. Like I wouldn't take the fact that I'm engaged to my fiance back just to be in Shiloh.
Right. Yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is now.
You're the culmination of your choices.
Exactly.
So before we get to it into 1VP, so that the other 12 weeks, like, is that you're starting to get into the nuts and bolts of infantry, like how to maneuver as an element and how to like all your, what would you call it, your small unit tactics or
shoot, move, communicate.
Is it battalion level or is it like very small?
It's like a pair, det, section, platoon level.
Okay, so platoon level. What are you doing? Patrolling, land nav,
all of it.
React contact drills, shooting, like the whole.
Yeah, we're doing lots of react contact. It was actually really refreshing because you were always doing soldier stuff. Like basic was a lot of like, you'd still have classes, you'd still have to do classes. You have to qualify on all the weapons. Like you have to qualify on your medium machine guns, your light machine guns, your rockets. Like you got Carl Gustav, your M72, your M203. C7, C8's the same thing, but like you have all your weapon qualifications, which happen all throughout the whole course, as well as in the interim, you're a lot of just bounding movement.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. A lot of bounding movement.
Yeah, a lot of team drills.
So what was your role there? Were you like machine gun guy? Like what was your job while you were there? Like or does it change daily?
It doesn't change daily. I kind of screwed up right near the beginning. Markers. We go on runs all the time or ruck marches, both interchangeably depending what you're doing, right? Sometimes you're ruck running, which is gay.
And he doesn't mean happy, folks.
I do not. So I was a marker, which means you have to stop traffic.
Okay.
At intersections.
Yeah,
and then you fall into the back, and then if somebody else falls back, you have to run to the front. So you're always having to run more than everybody else because you're
running twice
from
as much.
The back to the front.
Yeah.
If the other markers push out.
You're the dog.
Yeah. So I did that to myself on accident because the marker before me had accidentally left the marker vest in their barrack box back at the barracks. And I had taken the job from him and I hadn't clarified on where it was or what it was doing. So it was my own fault as well.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to throw him under the bus when we didn't have it on the ruck march home.
Right.
So I was like, hey, I forgot the vest. And I'm supposed to be the marker. And they're like, cool, you're up shit creek. So I got rode up for that. And then I was the marker for the rest of the course.
Okay.
So on every run, on every ruck, there was more of us. There was always 4.
Yeah.
I was always a marker. I always had to run, but I was also a machine gunner. So
you had to carry the. They call it the pig in the, or what do they call it?
I didn't have the 240.
Okay.
Like the 240 is the American designation of a very similar machine gun, which is our C6.
Right.
The C6 guy is always the smallest guy for some reason.
Sure.
I had a C9, which is an M249 saw to the Americans.
Yeah. So, quick question: when you're doing that training, are you moving with a full loadout, and what is that loadout?
Their loadout is kind of dependent on what the core staff writes on the whiteboard.
Oh, okay.
Your loadout that doesn't change is going to be, you don't have ammo when you're on base. Even if it's blanks, you don't have any of it if you're on base. It's when you go into the fields that you get loaded up with all your ammo. But your loadout would include your helmet, weapon of whatever that might be. If you're the Carl Gustav guy, you have a rocket launcher and a rifle. Yeah. And as well as your armor. Your armor is on you all the time. Your tack vest, which is a fishing vest, and it's stupid. You got your gas mask always attached on your leg, up to your tack vest, and then you have your bag, and your bag ranges from 40 to 80 pounds.
Okay, so running a SAW or a squad automatic weapon, again for the people who don't know all the acronyms, what sort of weight are you carrying ammo wise with that? Like how many rounds are you carrying?
When they load us up for live fires or even just blanks, you'd carry 4 boxes. I've carried as many as 6.
Okay,
which is it's 200 round belts.
Right.
But
cool.
4 was normal.
And how much weight do you think you're carrying on that with your pack, your armor, your weapon?
I think we weighed ourselves the one day. I think somebody had a scale, and I think with the bag and the gun, we didn't have ammo. Like bag, armor, gun, tack vest doesn't really weigh anything. We were like 85 pounds or something without ammo.
Oh, okay. So it's not like a crazy amount, but it's enough.
It's extra, 85 pounds extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then was that a choice or was that an assignment?
A bit of both. I love a machine gun.
Who wouldn't?
Lots of people hate the C9.
I guess if you don't have the upper body strength to carry it and stuff like that, it's not ideal. But
C9 was a blast. I was a C9 gunner even in battalion.
Okay.
And I loved running a C9. I always got really lucky though. I had really good C9s.
Right. Okay.
Mine seemed to cycle really well. So like when we do ambushes and stuff, I'd get to burn belts of ammo.
Oh, nice.
It's always fun.
You're not just sitting there constantly fixing malfunctions.
Yeah. I was really lucky that way. I'd like to say that some of that had to do with me, but I was a good machine gunner, but I think I got lucky with the equipment that I had too. Because I know some guys who were really good machine gunners who got really bad guns, and it was like they were running a bolt action. So
yeah, I could definitely see that. You never know what you're getting from the armory.
Yeah, so I got the same gun for all of my course, and then I had the same gun for a long time in battalion.
Okay,
like a different gun, but both those guns were assigned to me for a long time, and they were awesome. My guns ran really well. Like you have malfunctions every now and again, but in general.
And what's your specific job when in your platoon when you're reacting to contact as the SAW gunner?
Are you talking about responding to an ambush or
yeah,
like we're advancing to contact?
Yeah. So if you're on patrol and you guys get like contact left, what's the job of that guy?
Well, in general, everyone's supposed to be a double tap, dash down, crawl, communicate.
Okay.
So you get hit from one of the sides. You just need to get down. You need to maneuver from where you were, figure out where the enemy is, communicate that, and hit them. So that applies to a machine gunner as well, but your double tap's going to be a couple bursts.
Right.
Like if you know where they're coming from, especially marking with a machine gun is way easier because rather than trying to be like, reference my 12, he's at 2:00, 300 meters, like the classic thing.
Yeah.
I can just be like, hey, watch my trace and just let off a long burst and everyone can just watch where my tracers are going.
Oh, okay.
And I'd be like, hey, we're there.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Nice.
So it was kind of cheating because I could just fire tracers. But
cheaters always win though. My coach tells me that.
I loved running a machine gun. It was sucked sometimes when you're carrying it everywhere.
Yeah.
But when you actually got to use the machine gun for machine gun things, it was super fun.
Absolutely. Well, I think everybody, like everybody who joins the military at least wants to, get some experience to be to be that machine gunner, right? He's an important guy, right? He's the guy who's gonna, lay down some covering fire so your element can move and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yep.
You're a pretty important part of the team. So, moving on from that training, what does that development look like? Like once you get into your battalion and you're going through that training, what does that look like from the end of year 1 into year 2?
You climb the seniority ladder based on how you perform a lot faster, I'd say. Also, there was manpower issues when we got there. Not that there isn't manpower issues there.
Sure.
Now, but when I got there, it was super unfortunate timing. Like not just me, everyone who came from our course and the opposite course from across the country. It was super unfortunate timing because there was a company deploying to Iraq at the time. Evidently, it was just Kuwait.
Okay.
They didn't actually go into Iraq because Iraq was over at that point, but it was like...
And this is 2019 now?
Yeah, it'd be 2019.
Yeah.
So they were deploying to Iraq or Kuwait in reality, and the other group was deploying to Latvia.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I remember that.
So kind of most of the people who were deployable were in those two companies and sent out right when we got there. Like we had Maple Resolve and then they left.
Right.
Maple Resolve is just a big exercise in Wainwright. That's like international.
Yeah.
We have like the Americans, the British, the French were there.
Okay. Did you get a chance to?
Yeah, I was on Maple Resolve.
Interact and train with those guys. What was that like?
The British were really cool. I only got to work with some int guys from them. They were signals intelligence or something.
Okay.
They were pretty cool. I got pretty lucky. I got to try out somewhat gunning on a lav for Maple Resolve, and then it never happened again. For the CO's lav.
Okay.
And yeah, and then the Americans are just sick. They have Blackhawks and stuff, and we don't.
They do cool things.
They're pretty cool.
They lent us 2 for the border though.
They got really cool stuff. Yeah, that was a super cool experience just working internationally, even if it was like I'm brand new private, not exactly the key to winning these battles.
Yeah.
It's big game of laser tag, right? Like you wear a vest on top of your vest, and then your gun gets rigged up with a laser, and
yeah.
you still fire blanks and everything.
Yeah. Did you ever get a chance to train in that mock village that they have down there? Were you guys doing any of that?
We have a CCAN village that we've trained in.
Okay, because I remember seeing before guys were deploying, I think to Afghanistan, they did have like a big. Like,
you're talking about the concrete
village
compound.
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't get to go in that. That was one of the objectives, I believe, on Maple Resolve.
Okay.
My company wasn't part of that. My lav actually cracked in half the day. I do mean that, like the Hulk split.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The day before Maple Resolve kicked off proper, because we did all of our workup training before Maple Resolve started. And then right as it's about to start, our lav broke. So they had to split guys off and shove them in vehicles where they could fit. And then we got stuck on an OP for like a week and a half, just digging trenches and sitting in the dirt, and then moving to a different trench and digging a trench, sitting in the dirt.
Real Army stuff.
Yeah, I actually died of, this is funny because like if you, your thing will tell you how you died. Like if you get shot, you're bleeding out of this. Like if the medics come up, I died of starvation. By that, I mean my battery just died.
Okay.
We were supposed to get batteries every couple days for the system. We were guarding the back of like the main headquarters, so nothing happened until my battery died.
Wow. Supply issues even in simulation.
Yeah, no, it was the most realistic thing that's ever happened. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So
well,
is this after you're at 1VP, or
this is after 1VP? Like I literally, myself and the rest of us got there. We were there for like a week and then went back to Maple Resolve.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you went to 1VP and checked in, what was your job? Like, did you already know what you were going to be doing when you got there?
No, I was generally a lot of new guys get a C9. Okay, just because you get to hump around the machine gun.
Okay, so and 1st Battalion, for anyone listening, that is a armored infantry. Is it armored infantry? Or
we're not light infantry. We're mechanized.
Mechanized. Okay.
Yeah. So we run the Lav 6.
Yeah.
You can seat, you're supposed to seat like 6 to 8, but I've seen 10 in a lav, and it's very not comfortable. Lavs are just 8-wheeled, 30-ton vehicles with 25 millimeter chain guns on top of them.
Okay, so is that the training to operate as mechanized infantry? Was that covered when you were in Wainwright, or is that once you got to 1VP you started to learn how to mechanized infantry work?
Yes, that second one is correct. You did everything light infantry when you were in Wainwright, because we didn't have access to any vehicles.
Sure.
So dismounting and doing attacks from a vehicle is a very different thing.
Sure.
Because there's a whole process to effectively and quickly getting out the back of a lav and then getting into your formation and then advancing.
Right.
Because like your C9 gunner plays even a bigger role than he would as far as like that same section on let's say a light infantry context, because you're still going to need to provide cover fire, but like the closest, if you're dismounting left or right, your C9 gunner posts up right behind the wheel, the back wheel of the lav, and just starts laying fire into where you're going while everyone else peels out into position.
Right. And then how many armored units, like how many vehicles do you have generally on any given exercise you guys are doing? Like just for your platoon?
One place I felt like we were really lucky, like I got lucky as far as experience goes, is my company, which is Bravo Company, got attached to the Strathconas, which are the tanks.
Okay.
We were the intimate support company for the tanks. So most of our exercises in Wainwright, we did after that, were working with the tanks on live fire drills, which was super fun.
That sounds damn cool. And those are Leopard tanks?
Yeah, Leopard 2s.
Nice.
I think we have anything from the Leopard 2 base to the Leopard 2A6.
Okay. And do we still have any?
No, I think the last of all of our stuff's been given to the Ukraine to die there, so I don't think we have any equipment left.
We had the 4. We might have just had the 4. Don't quote me on the A numbers. Anyone who's watching this who's good at tanks.
I used to pay attention to that stuff when I was younger. Loved armor, but that's that's pretty cool, man.
They're really cool. When a chain gun fires, you feel the thud. Like especially I'll always remember my first section attack live fire, because the chain gun just starts bucking off. And it's ejecting all the shells at the front. It throws them all at the front of the turret. But like inside the vehicle, it's like there's like some smoke going on, and like you can smell it, you can feel it, and you get out, and there's just high explosive rounds just impacting like 1,000 yards out, and they're exploding. But then I remember rounding my first corner. My first live fire was with a tank, and it was at night, and I was actually a 2IC.
Sweet.
But the main gun on the Leopard 2 fired, and he was probably I don't know 50 yards away, but like the difference between it was boom, and your whole body shook, and he was like parallel to me, just 50 yards that way, and it was just really cool.
No shit.
Yeah.
Well, you're bringing the heat now, right?
Yeah. It was just having a 120 fire just right there was really neat, and it's a super cool experience to have got to have.
Awesome. Was there anything? I mean, aside from that, because that sounds super memorable. Was there anything that really stuck out to you in that part of your experience?
Our exercises, especially like working in combat team environments, were really fun because we never really got to work with close air a lot, because just the nature of the beast, Canada doesn't have a lot of it.
We don't know. That's not our...
But we did get to work with our not Hueys, which are called Griffins.
Yep.
And there was a few times where we worked with mortars, tanks, and helicopters. And the helicopters would be having door gunners out the side of them, and they're just tracers coming out the sky.
And those guys are just having the fucking time.
That is the dream. Yeah. That was the goal I wanted to get to, because door gunners are infantry guys attached to the 408 squadron in Edmonton.
Yep.
So you're an infantry guy who gets to go to the helicopters, and you're not Air Force at all.
Right.
You just get to run a machine gun out the side of a helicopter.
That sounds pretty awesome, man.
That was the dream.
Yeah. I think that would be everybody's dream.
Yeah, it should be.
That's every kid that grew up watching war movies' dream. Right?
Oh, yeah,
if you watched any Vietnam movies, you want to be the door gunner.
Yeah, that's the iconic full metal jacket scene, right at the very beginning. So you stayed on for 4 years. Did you plan to make a career of the military? Like, was that kind of like your goal?
Realistically, if things hadn't happened the way they did, I would still be in the military.
Okay.
There's a lot of issues with military life, and there's a lot of downsides. That being said, I loved that job. I would still do that job.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So to get to it, what changed in your experience from the time you get in, you're doing all this awesome stuff, all the cool guy shit. It sounds like you were maybe like excelling at what you were doing. You were at least getting it and kind of living that life. When did things start to change?
When I got out, like the end of my DP1 was actually a really cool thing because my name is going to be in that school forever now, because I got 3 out of the 4 awards you can get on a course.
Nice.
What
are those awards?
I got top candidate, top shot, and the comradeship award.
Okay.
Which the only one of those I'm actually proud of is the comradeship award, because that means it was voted on by my peers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is the one that I think is the coolest overall.
Yeah.
But I got those 3, and I didn't tell anyone in battalion about that because that's just lame.
Yeah.
But I got there, and they had actually forwarded all my certificates to my battalion.
Okay.
So my officer came up to me one of the days. I think I was late. I was late. I was trying to like move as a pair, like with my new assigned fire team partner.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave anybody behind. I thought that would be a big deal. And I show up to battalion. He's like, "You're late." I'm like, "Yeah, I was just trying to work as a group." And he's like, No. If he's going to be late, you leave him late. This is battalion. You show up on time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, and then, but it was just such a shame how that all happened.
Well, let's dig into it. Like, so what are we now? We're in 2020.
Yeah, 2020. It was all like I'd only been in the military for a couple minutes, realistically. Like
Yeah.
I had 6 months of training, six months of battalion, and then COVID happens.
And you're still a private at this point, or
yeah, that's a whole thing in itself.
Okay.
So I was a private. I was working as a 2IC underneath my section commander, which was it was neat to be given that much responsibility as a new private. There was a lot of new privates in my section, but I was trusted with. Being a 2IC is basically just keeping track of people's gear and making sure they drink water.
Sure.
Yeah,
like,
change your socks, drink some water.
Making sure everyone's where they're supposed to be, but like all the higher level stuff is being done by your IC. Like all of your orders and all of the breakdown of information that gets passed down to us is all happening through your IC. I'm just babysitting and or water and stuff.
Yeah.
That's the gist. And ad reps. But after COVID hit, everyone got sent home for a long time. For several months, no one was allowed to go into base at all. So it was a lot of Call of Duty.
And this is into 2020 now.
This
because
is into
COVID,
2020.
with the inklings of it were in 2019. It was like November of 19. We started hearing a little bit, and so this would be what, spring of 2020, like March, April.
Yeah, it might have. I'm gonna be hazy on the exact
Sure,
time,
but somewhere
it was early 2020,
Yeah.
like in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, everything we got shut down, sent home.
How did that get communicated to you guys?
Just same way as everything else. It was just, I think we had a big assembly on it, which is funny in COVID sort of things.
Just get everyone in the same room and talk about it.
Yeah, having a big battalion get together, and then they sent us all home, and then we just sat at home for months, like just months.
Were you guys still getting paid?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank God I lived off base. Otherwise, you'd have been stuck in the barracks room the whole time.
Yeah, that's doesn't sound fun.
No, it wasn't, but it was literally just Call of Duty. Like there was nothing glamorous about it. It was like trying to stay fit without leaving your house.
Yeah.
And playing Warzone.
Did you, and I guess before we get to it, were you doing that with your battalion, like playing Call of Duty as like still trying to stay collective and still sort of like trying to have some sort of cohesion, or was just kind of everyone went their separate ways and was?
It was mostly, I was still playing with dudes from the Army, but it was guys who I went to infantry school with.
Okay.
Like they were 2VP, and like we would hang out, and it was fun. It was Army-esque, but it was Call of Duty. So
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Every recruiter's dream is just go to work, and it's Call of Duty in real life, right?
I wonder if that works. I bet you that does work.
I bet you it does.
Yeah. And then as things went on, what kind of orders were you getting after a few months?
It was all of a sudden it was start coming in, but like this was pre the vaccine.
Yep.
So all of a sudden you could come in, but like there was social distancing rules and there was masking indoors. And
were you guys like stuck in cohorts? I know that was a big thing.
I mean, kind of. It was mostly like you'd stick to your company.
Okay.
And your companies are kind of segregated because like the way the battalion was set up, it was Alpha Bravo Charlie and then all your transport company, and then your support companies were across the way. So everyone's kind of segregated as is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just with the way everything is. Like we all have our own armories. We all have our own like set, all of our gear is in big cages and stuff. So like it was pretty easy to be segregated. If you got any COVID-like symptoms, God forbid, you would get sent home, and then you'd have to stay there until you could get a negative test, and then you come back to work. So there was a lot of people who were just not there sometimes. There was a lot of abuse of the system too.
Sure.
Where guys just didn't want to come in.
Yeah.
And
were you living in Edmonton at the time?
I was. Yeah.
Okay.
I was living in downtown Edmonton, right by Rogers Place, actually.
Okay.
But that kind of all transitioned. We still were trying to do some training, but it was really on the low end. Like PT would happen, but it was almost always outdoors or not even in a group setting. It would be like solo PT. That it all kind of went on that way with people trying to just get on as much as they could until the vaccine came out, and then things kind of went wild.
What did that look like? Was that like kind of a mass order to everybody, or did that come by like email, or?
It was, I don't know how it happened for everyone, because apparently different battalions had different experiences. Like my boys in 2 had way different experiences than I did. It came down kind of like the rollout, like, hey, this is going to be mandatory X, Y, and Z. And I wasn't opposed to it. I had literally I was like, hey guys, do we know if this is good? Because it's been like 6 months and they're just like, hey, get this injection. Like, how can that be safe?
Did you already have like the battery of military?
I had everything.
Like how? Because you have a Vax card already through the military.
Yeah, I've gotten TB like 5 times because they lost my card.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I wasn't like anti-vax or anything. I was just like, hey, I don't know how this is possible, guys. Like this is supposed to go through some R&D, and it's like 3 months since they started the research process, and they have one already. That doesn't make any sense to me. So all I did was ask a question. And
there you go.
I got pulled to the side
and
sent up to my OC's room, and he pulls me in. He says, hey, you're going to get this or I'm going to ruin your fucking life. Mm-hmm. That was my first interaction to it.
What's his name?
I don't remember.
Okay.
If you're watching this.
I like it.
It was just crazy to me that like that was my first experience of it, because from then on my guard went straight up. Like if
you're any kind of, because I think and there's been a whole bunch of podcasts. I'm a pretty big fan of like military podcasts, and that seems to be one of the things that a lot of people talk about. I know really the only Canadian military person who has spoken out at all in public was Dallas Alexander, going on the Sean Ryan show.
Oh, he was the sniper.
And talking about talking about what that process was like. And to say like, hey, look, you select us to be the people who stand up to bullies. Mm-hmm. We're trained to be the people who think on our own, to be the people who think outside the box and find solutions. And now when we do that in this situation, all of a sudden it's like we're the bad guy. So it's like now you want us to be the ones who conform and capitulate, and it's like that doesn't make any sense. Like.
Well, I tried to refer it back because, like, from then on, it was a fight. Like, every moment in my military career after that was a downward spiral of me fighting and losing.
So he tells you, hey, you're going to get this or you're fucked.
Yeah.
You leave his office. Now what?
Well, now I'm a black sheep.
Okay.
So, like, the vaccine rollout happened, and it was a date, time, you had to be there. I had to be there. Like, I still had to show up. They took, they did a checklist of everyone that was there to make sure you were there. Then they sent you into the drill hall, and they had a huge COVID vaccination set up for everyone to go in, and you went in groups, and you weren't allowed to say anything. until you went in and sat down in front of the doctor, and then you could say no. After they had taken their injection out, taken the sleeve off, then you were like, do you want this? Then you said yes. Then you were allowed to say yes or no.
Okay.
And then whether or not you said yes or no didn't matter because you had to go sit there and not talk to anyone in the group where they had the adverse effects section after to see if anyone had a bad reaction.
Right.
So it was just it was probably like 10 by 10 set of chairs all spaced apart where you'd have to go in and sit there and not talk to anybody because they just didn't want you to look different. Like, even though I didn't get
surreal, man.
Even though I didn't get the shot, I had to sit there.
Yeah. And you wouldn't know who else in there did or did not.
That was the whole idea. It was like, even if
propaganda at a base.
Just something out of like
it was like, well, everyone's did the same thing. So like, yeah. So like, I had to go in there, sit there, wait the amount of time it would take me to get my vaccination, then go sit in the other thing and wait for my adverse reactions, which weren't going to happen, to then go out. And it was all so surreal. I was like, I don't understand. Like, well, you can't have you looking different than everyone else who is getting it.
Right.
It turned out like only 2 people out of my company didn't get it, like myself and one other person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which meant that I wasn't allowed to go into the gym. I was constantly pulled out. Like on one of our exercises, I had my platoon chant my death.
Oh, jeez.
For not getting it.
Wow.
I was going to ask about that. Was there that that sort of herd mentality that you saw in the public? You know, the virtue signaling, the arm up, showing that I got my vax, all that kind of stuff. Like,
face.
But that kind of division. I did remember reading a news article about how there was people in the military that refused the vaccine who had been kind of definitely ostracized, but like institutionally segregated from the rest of the military to the point where they weren't kind of getting looked after properly.
I heard that happened out in the east somewhere. Like some guys were left in the cold and they got real sick.
Yeah, something like that. We're allowed on the bus or something like that.
I've heard some of that as well. I don't want to speak on things that I wasn't personally a part of because there's a lot of stuff that's hearsay from inside the military too. Because like I know a talk that went through the military was the military actively going out and force vaccinating people. I don't know what level that occurred at. I don't know if that was just a private rumor, but that went through 1st Battalion.
Yeah,
right.
Of like the medics are going to go door to door and 1st Battalion is going to go support.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're going to drag you out and vaccinate you.
And everyone thought it was ridiculous, but like it was a time where everything that was ridiculous was happening. So it was like, how unreal is it?
Yeah, and you grew up on a ranch. You know what it's like to drag something out and vaccinate it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
This does happen, guys.
No, it was a very surreal time because like everyone, if you said it out loud, it sounded ridiculous.
Yeah,
but then also everything that else was happening was ridiculous. Like I was actively in an argument with like there was a lot of guys who were like, I only got it for X, Y, or Z reason, which I respect the hell out of. Like,
sure,
it's not my decision to make for you. That was the whole point. Was I don't care if you got it. I didn't think it was right to force people to get it.
Right.
And I was referring back to like the Geneva Conventions and our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which apparently was never ratified, so it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Which I found out later while I was trying to do these things. The Geneva Convention they just ignored.
Yep.
I had a 5-page memo that my officer actually was kind enough to help me vet it so that it would appear correct before the JAG, which is our brigade level lawyer, military lawyer, about how this is infringing upon, like, this is coercion. Like, I'm actively being threatened every day with, like, there was talks about sending me to the pen for a bit.
Yeah.
Like, to the military penitentiary off base.
Wow.
It wasn't just me. Like, there was other guys there.
Yeah.
All these things were on the table, and then they were still going to 5F all of us. That was
so there's just a level of coercion, like
it was constant. It was always overhead. Like my officer, even though he was a really good guy, every day was like, "Hey, have you changed your mind yet?" And then like from higher up, it was like, you're under these administrative measures now, and you're under these things. And like I got sent to Wainwright to help on a DP1 to get me out of battalion. Stuff like that. And it was...
So they start giving you the shit jobs and kind of taking you out of the day-to-day so you don't get to be part of the team anymore.
I think I stopped being part of the team very shortly after. Yeah. It was just such a weird time. Like looking back on it, it's like surreal. Cause even outside the military, like one of my best friends from high school uninvited me from his wedding because I wasn't doing my part. I was supposed to be his best man, and all of a sudden I wasn't invited to the wedding.
And I think like,
I think everybody who kind of thought for themselves and made that choice, because I think that in that moment there was a choice that was made that you either took the vaccine or you didn't. And I don't think anybody who chose to not do it didn't have some level of social repercussion.
Oh, everybody who chose not to paid the price socially, but I think, here we are 2025, and I think everybody that didn't do it and held to their ground certainly feels better about it.
I don't think anybody regrets it.
Nope. Nobody regrets not doing it. I got a good personal friend of mine that I was chatting with the other day. He's a pilot, and it fucked him up, man. His heart's fucked. And so he's not going to be able to fly a whole lot longer. He's kind of worried about all that. And you're like, and they know that's what caused it. Like this is an otherwise healthy dude, and here he is having to live with that. And so, and other people, maybe nothing really happened to him, but I don't want to, derail the whole conversation, go down that rabbit hole about all the, increased cancer and all these other side effects and all the shit that's going on. But I don't know a single person who stood their ground and said, I'm not getting it. None of them regret that decision.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had that level.
Other than like they don't regret the decision on when it comes to their personal health. They might regret how it impacted their life as far as, maybe not being able to pursue their dreams or their passions. But
yeah, and we had people on the podcast who they're 25 years into a career in whatever it is they're doing, some government work, some Canadian forces. And they're looking at it like, if I don't do this, I lose my pension.
Yeah.
I lose the thing that I've been working towards for 20 years. It's going to, keep me going. And I think that's another reason, I suppose what I really want to say is express my gratitude for you coming and speaking about this, because, I've had these conversations, over beers and closed doors, but no one will go on the record, because if they're retired RCMP or they're retired from civil service or they're retired from Canadian forces, I think there's a fear out there that if they go and they speak out, then they're going to lose those benefits.
Well, there's not much more they can do to me, because they also denied my Veterans Affairs claims based on the vaccine as well.
Oh, wow. Really?
So while I was fighting fire in BC, I had a small tumble down a mountain, and I compressed a disc in my back.
Yeah. This sounds like a story. Like,
it's not really. It was just a lot of walking up and down mountains with some wet deadfall, and I fell like 50 yards.
Okay.
I still worked out the rest of the day. I needed 2 days laying on my back before I could move again.
Right.
And now I have lasting issues.
Yeah.
I tried to get help from Veterans Affairs. I also got told by a bunch of people in my personal life that I should get some sort of semblance of repayment for the mental duress is what they...
Sure.
Yeah, I think there are cases in front of the courts like that right now.
Well, they denied me everything based on the fact they were going to kick me out for the vaccine anyways. Like that was the reply I got from Veterans Affairs.
Wow.
Like everything related, my hearing, my eyes, everything was denied me because they were going to kick me out over the vaccine anyways.
That's
so like, what else
insane.
can they do to me?
Yeah.
I already lost my job. I got out of the military with honor only because my officer was willing to help me get a 30-day VR done. So I finished my 30-day VR, I don't know, like a week or two before the final date was through on my 5F.
Right.
Like that was the close periods of which I was going to like possibly not be. I don't even know what's all involved in a 5F because it's like a dishonorable discharge, but
Yeah, because what is it, 4F's medical...
Yeah.
Yeah. So was there anybody else in the same situation as you that you know of?
Lots. Guys I didn't know that personally. The really big, like, cool guys, they got rid of them real quick.
Sure, because they're leaders.
Yeah.
Leaders are dangerous.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was not
Yeah.
one of the faster ones. I don't want to name his name. Well, we had a master sniper in 1st Battalion who had led sniper teams in Afghanistan on like 3 or 4 tours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a bad motherfucker. Guy that everyone respected.
Yeah.
And he was gone like that.
Yeah, because he would
rally the troops. Yeah.
Yeah.
nobody wants a mutiny. Oh my God.
You don't want
Yeah.
that. You didn't want that guy in charge of anything because he that's dangerous when you have a guy of that sort of standing in a military environment.
Well, level of
Yeah.
respect.
where the little guys can fall in behind him.
I hear these stories like they come out now, and it's disturbing, if not chilling, to see the military look inside of itself to start to cull people out of its ranks who may stand up against.
Well, we found that out like actually verbatim what you just said. We found that out later.
Yeah,
that it was all a culling.
Yeah.
It was all anyone who would challenge, because like we get taught in basic, and this is a huge part of basic, is learning the difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order.
Right.
And like, if you give me an order that I'm supposed to go and kill 3 kids who have no rhyme or reason to be killed, and I say no because that's an unlawful order, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's immoral, it's wrong.
And now these unlawful orders are coming out, and they expect you to comply.
But this was an unlawful order. It was immoral. It was against international law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like we'd bring it up. Like it wasn't just me. Like I'm not like the sole survivor of 1VP. Like I'm not that cool. I'm not that guy.
No, I'd imagine your experience was felt a lot.
It was felt that there was, I don't know how many of us in 1VP, probably like 30 of us in 1VP
Okay.
overall, of different ranks. There's a couple officers, a lot of sergeants and master corporals. They were the ones who seemed to be the most willing to like go against the grain, which I respect them for because they have more to lose.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
their job, though. Like, if you look at how in the way that the team structures work, your master corporals and sergeants are your leaders. They're the guys in the trenches who are thinkers, who are your independent thinkers. They're the guys that get fucking things done on the field.
Yes, sergeants and master corporals are, I would argue, they're your most important ranks.
Yeah.
Master corporals are the glue that hold those two structures together, because once you get past master corporal into sergeant, you're more of a higher ranking leadership. Like that's more of an interim to officers.
Yeah.
Master corporals do a lot of deflecting of shit.
Yeah.
They save the lower, if they're good master corporals, they save their troops from a lot.
Yeah, that's good leadership.
Do you think then, like, this mass culling of, like, as you put it, when you start to get rid of those people, is that, would you see that's the side effect of what we're seeing now in the CAF is, the blue-haired generals with the tampons in the men's bathrooms and the wokeness and all that? Is that the result, do you think? Because as you drive out your independent thinkers and your leaders, your guys who are like what we would think of as war fighters.
They drove out the war fighters.
When you get rid of those guys, is that what you're left with?
Yes, I think you get left with a lot more politics than anything.
Sure.
I think when you lose the pragmatic war fighters, which is, they were already on the way out before I joined the military.
Sure.
Because realistically, Afghanistan ended proper in 2013, 2015.
Yeah.
Time in there, it was a wind down and it was done. Your war fighters were on the way out. They were out of the popular view of the political sphere.
Yeah.
Because they weren't the people that they wanted anymore. So like those guys were not only not appreciated, they were getting pushed out.
Yeah.
And then I got to see the last, like when I got to battalion, there was still quite a few really good NCOs. And by the time COVID was halfway through, there was none. Like there was nobody left. Like I had one master corporal who had seen combat. I can think of 2 sergeants that had seen combat. Like everyone was
right.
It was a bunch of officers that had never been anywhere.
Yeah.
It was just politics. It was like, how can we do GBA plus again today? Like we're not going to go to the range because we only go shoot twice a year. We're going to go and do gender studies on.
Right, and this is the whole, like, in my mind, the North Korean generals, where it's like you got these people who have done fuck all, but they got the whole chest plate full of all these fancy shiny.
down-
Looks like the dollar store badges you get at the store.
Yeah.
Goes down the leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because one of the reasons why I find this so disturbing is because if the military can be so politicized on the basis of this medical intervention, then it can easily be as politicized for political reasons, right? So you've got members in your service who might not like the direction that, the federal administration is going. So you start to get rid of them. It's all very dystopian and reminds me a lot of the banana republics or any of these tyrannical nations where, an administration comes in, we're like, oh, you got people in the military that don't like this administration. The people in the military are supposed to be non-political, right? They're there to serve the people. They're not there to serve the masters, right?
That's one of the things I think got lost so hard is there was a lot. I still think like if we could have every young man go through basic, even like I went through basic, because I know my basic wasn't as hard as the guys before or whatever. I know that, or at least I'm told that.
Well, everybody had the hardest
everyone
time
had the
ever,
hardest
right?
time ever. Right? Yeah. Even there were so many benefits that I think, especially for young men, maybe everyone, but like especially for young men, where it's like you learn how to be a leader, whether or not you want to be, whether or not you like, you're the leader today. Make it work.
Yeah.
Like they teach you like basic things like how to brush your teeth, how to clean yourself, like things like it brings everyone up to a baseline. And then it instilled in you a level of values about how every person has value. All humans are supposed to be treated with some degree of respect. Whether or not they're your enemy, they have to have a degree of respect given to them.
Well, and it teaches you a certain measure of self-respect too. Like you said, it teaches you how to brush your teeth, how to clean yourself. Like you got to understand that like the influx of people coming into these organizations, it teaches you a base level of societal expectations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where, hey, you are worth it. You need to look after yourself. Like you need to brush your teeth.
Well, and every task is equally important.
Yes.
Right.
And everything is team play. Everything is not, it doesn't matter if you succeed, if everyone else fails.
Right.
If you succeed, everyone else fails, you failed.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff where it's like, you don't win unless you win as a group.
Yeah.
All these things that it makes you realize how unimportant you are. And it's interesting looking at the COVID thing in that light, whereas like, I still, like I got the shit end of the stick for a long time in that little section of my life, but I still wasn't important. Like there was, the only reason I thought I even had value in speaking out was I thought maybe I could save someone else from what was happening to me.
But the greed machine's going to grind on. Do you, some of the other guys like, maybe I'm just assuming, but that you were there long enough to develop some relationships with guys in your platoon or your section, and they decided to get the jab and you didn't. Mm-hmm. Are you still in contact with some of those people? Where you're looking back and like, are you still kind of feeling a little bit ostracized, or are they kind of looking at you like, man, like I'm fucking, like, how's that look now for you?
A lot of the guys who I'm still in contact with, all regret their decision to get the shot in general.
Yeah.
But at the time it didn't feel like much of a decision.
Like they were forced to do it.
Yeah. Like even the way I had to go, I had to show up, I had to have my name checked off a list and then go through the whole process. That wasn't just me, that was everybody.
Yeah.
Like it's not an easy task for people in that situation where everyone around them, like there's a super huge degree of groupthink.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's in a line, not allowed to talk. And now you're in a little cubicle with a doctor with a syringe out being like, hey, last chance, only chance, yes or no. Like I don't, the people who I look back on with disdain, and this is a me problem, is the people who had the audacity to tell me that I was the problem and I was causing their death, and like who are actively seeking my demise.
Yeah.
now looking back, being like, yeah, I shouldn't have, it could have happened to anybody. It was like, no, you were a bastard.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people who got dealt a hand where it was like, I have this job for 10 years and I need it to provide for my family and I can't just go from this to this.
Yep.
And like, that's scary. I understand that. Like, if you go out and there's 100,000 different reasons why you get the shot, and I don't look at you any different. I don't think it was a good decision, but like, I don't think of you less as a person. No,
I think that's for a lot of people. Like, I never begrudged anybody for getting it. I know in a situation that I was in, leadership position that I was in, I made very, very clear to my people that it was a personal choice, and that there was no judgment one way or the other. It was very non-political. But in one of the things that we just saw, and I think in an organization like that, where you start to bring in policies like some of the DEI policies that are very, very conformist, because it's forced conformity. You will think this way. You will treat people this way. You will accept this new way of thinking. And the people who go along to get along, the people who can virtue signal the most, the people who can say, I'm super complying, look at me, like, those are the people who maybe people of weak character who are finding a way to edge up in the hierarchy a little bit, because, and you see this anywhere where there's bureaucracy, right? The best people might not rise to the top. It's the people who can excel in the shitty part of the organization who will kind of float to the surface in bad situations. And we saw a ton of that in COVID. And I imagine the military was no different.
It was interesting being in the time that I was in, because I was only in for such a short period, and I was such a minute part of that organization. Like, I was supposed to be, this is a funny story, I was supposed to be a corporal. I had already been doing a corporal or master corporal's position, and I was supposed to be advanced promoted to corporal, and then I was supposed to do my corporal, because you get corporal after a certain amount of time, or you get advanced promoted. I was told I was going to get advanced promoted, then the COVID thing happened. And then down the road later than that, I was supposed to have my time in corporal given to me. And they actually stood all of us at attention in my platoon, brought me up to receive my badge. And then the sergeant major came up, whispered in his ear. He put his badge back in his pocket, and we got dismissed. So I never got demoted, but I did get demoted because on my exit, they had to change all of my paperwork. I was already a corporal on paper.
Oh, wow.
They had to demote me back to private on my exit from the military.
So it was pretty vindictive.
It was vindictive.
They fucked you.
Yeah,
because it would have changed, like, since I got out with honor, it would have changed, like, what sort of benefits I was eligible for later. Like, my pension would have changed, my pay would have changed.
Right.
All this stuff would have changed, but it was just vindictive of, I still haven't complied, so therefore I don't get it.
Yeah, that's some really petty shit.
It was really petty shit.
Yeah, and to see that in such an honorable organization,
used to be an honorable organization.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking to see, right? Like, and I would imagine, like, I follow a little bit of the Canadian Forces social media and stuff like that. So when they're out doing some exercises and stuff like that, like, and that there's people who are there for the right reasons.
Yep.
And they're doing it because that's what they want to be doing. They love it. And, like, I just can't imagine, kind of like being a cop now, like, just when everybody hates the police and defund the police and treat them like shit. And here's this thing where this is what you want to do, and you feel some kind of calling to be there, and you're trying to thrive in an organization that doesn't want you there. They want people there, just not people like you.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and you're the person who should be there, right? More so than anybody. And to see that is just, it's so frustrating and disheartening. If things changed, say post-election, the regime that we have changes course, and kind of like we saw Donald Trump offer people jobs back, would you go back?
Well, it's such an interesting question, because the short answer would be yes, but the long answer is I don't even know how you fix that organization now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the rot is so deep. It's not just like you kick out 3 generals and you're good to go. Like your rot is from like the lowest level enlisted privates to your highest ranking generals. Like there's good people in the mix there, but most of it isn't.
Yeah, they're probably pretty quiet.
A lot of it is just dead weight. Like I don't know how you do it. Like our entire logistical infrastructure of how we get equipment is a joke. Like we run the Lav 6, I talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
The Lav 6, just for context, is a bigger, heavier, same vehicle as the Lav 3. It's a bigger target. It's got a worse power to weight ratio because it's got the same engine as the Lav 3. It's got the same gun, but they spent millions and millions of dollars on a vehicle that's worse than the prior version.
So they just try to like up armor it further for our IEDs or what?
They lifted it off the ground more for IEDs.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I think our entire logistical thing could be summed up. How many, it would, was it 16 years ago we bought those 4 submarines from the British that were mothballed fucked, like they were basically right off garbage.
Yeah.
And so after 2 years, like one caught on fire, they had to tow it into port, whatever thing is. It took 14 years to repair it. They just put it back into service. So,
I read that, yeah, recently.
So logistically, like we understand that our government and our procurement process for equipment, like it's all completely and horribly fucked. I'm not sure how you go about fixing it, and who's getting rich, because the billions are still spent. It's still gone and we don't have anything to show for it. But if it takes 14 years to fix an already fucked submarine, like I don't want to point out the obvious, but we live next to America, who has some of the finest.
I can't wrap my head around that one either.
Military equipment in the world. And I still don't understand why we wouldn't just buy American submarines.
Do you want to know why?
Well, yeah.
Oh, there's a reason.
I already know why. Like, you can answer it in a second, but I'll just finish with this little piece that when your Canadian identity, and we've talked about this before, is distinctly built on the fact that we're not American. We don't know what it means to be Canadian because we're not patriotic. Right, yeah. We have no fucking idea, but all we know is we're not American. Yeah. And that's not something to necessarily be proud of, in my opinion, but like,
I think being Canadian is something we should be proud of if we knew what it meant.
Yeah.
Not being American is not a virtue. Yeah. I've worked with a lot of great Americans.
Well, I argue we are. Because you know what? You can go to many, many places in Canada, and I would say damn near all of them. And you can walk across the border and stand in the United States and talk to anybody who lives there, and it's zero difference. The people live the same. The language is the same. The culture is the same. There is zero difference. You're going to see a couple of different things with taxes, rights, government, but essentially to the people, basically the same. You go from parts of Ontario into Detroit, there's going to be some difference, but not that much difference. You go from Vancouver to Seattle, not a whole lot of difference. You go from Alberta into Montana, not a whole lot of difference. You go from America to Mexico, big difference. Mexico is not America. You can see it. Get across the border, right? It's Mexico. They speak a different language. They're a different race of people. They live differently, govern differently, different history, totally different political lifestyle, everything. But that Canadian thing, we're really, really close to being like we're like in the same family. It's like we're cousins or brothers.
Yeah.
There's not that much difference, but I think with our the whole not American thing, I think that's a bit of a misnomer. I think we're very, very, very American, but we just don't want to admit it.
I just don't know why it's a bad thing.
It's not. America's fucking awesome.
Yeah. The fact that one of the things I'm so envious about as a Canadian about America is their patriotism towards their nation. Yeah. I felt that when I joined the military, and it's dead. I would love for it. I'm more of an Albertan than I'm a Canadian now.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I feel a lot of that way myself, and it's not an accident. If we follow the government's own programming, like what Justin Trudeau said, we are a post-national state, right? You're a global citizen. You're not a Canadian citizen. Now it's different. Now everybody's Team Canada, and everybody wants to, wave the flag that they wouldn't let you wave a couple of years ago all of a sudden. But the propaganda is just so thick in Canada, and people just are so eager to believe that what the government knows is right, when, like, we were just talking logistics. I mean, since the dawn of time, I'm no military historian, but since the dawn of time, militaries win or lose or empires fall by logistics. Can you feed and equip your people? And if our people at the top can't seem to figure that basic part out about like to run things logistically, then there's some really, really big problems.
Our military couldn't leave Canada without the U.S.'s help.
Very true.
That is a fact.
That's a fact. Our newest vehicle is a TAP V. I'm just going to go on a little rant here, one sec.
That's fine.
Send it.
Our newest vehicle is a TAP V. It's a boat-looking thing with big 4 wheels. It looks like it should be amphibious, but isn't. It's taller than a LAV. It's loud. It has a machine gun and a grenade launcher.
Oh, I saw one of those in the War Museum.
Okay.
In Ottawa.
I was going to say, I don't know why it's in a museum yet. It's brand new.
Yeah.
It spontaneously combusts, rolls, and locks all its doors.
Perfect.
Like when it catches fire, it locks all its doors. We almost lost like 6 crews.
Oh my goodness.
We had twice in my 4 years in the military. Every one of them in Canada was grounded. Twice, the whole fleet.
Goodness.
I did my last qualification on my pistol with a Browning high power from 1943 with no front sight. That was my last pistol qualification. I passed, but you shoot it
with no front sight.
Yeah, it was 5 yards. It was 5 yards. You hit a man-sized target, and I had no front post. My grouping was the best.
I could imagine, yeah.
My C7 was so shot out that every round at 100 yards was hitting a foot left or a foot right and would stovepipe every other round.
It was just keyholing like crazy.
I have Crown Cross rifles on my DEUs, and I was the top shot in my course. So I brought up to my officers, like, hey, my rifle's fucked.
Yeah.
I can't do my qualification with this. One of my sergeants who was still there at the time, this is right before he left also, gave me his C8 because my officer tried to tell me I just wasn't following my marksmanship principles. It wasn't the rifle's fault. It was my fault. And I was like, normally that's true, but like, you're welcome to get behind the gun and show me.
Yeah.
So my sergeant gave me his C8. I shot marksman again. I was one of 2 people in my company to shoot marksman. And I was like, hey, officer, just by the way, gun worked. Just by
he's been in some of my classes. This motherfucker can shoot.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
But it's just stuff like that. It was everything about it. Like our fishing vests. Like, have you seen a Canadian military tank vest?
Yeah, the load bearing gear is not great.
I don't want to go on a counter rant to that.
Well, Molly is an American thing, right?
But when you talk about, they always talk about procurement and the process, and I am a fucking logistics guy. I did it for the Alberta government in my 20s. I understand how to move things across the board, and now I'm in retail, and I do a lot of purchasing in the 6 figures, or 7 figures, I guess. What's mind blowing to me is how they're like, oh, like we can't get pistols and we can't get this, and I'm like, fuck, like I can just pick up the phone and I could buy it. And I'm just in retail. Like I don't have these weird government contracts, and I don't have all this weird like hang-ups about it, but like we can literally buy all that stuff. And you know, when people are like, oh, like where would we get like a couple thousand AR-15s or you know, a couple thousand Glocks? And I'm like, well, shit, like that's just a phone call away. It just takes money. Like, and you could probably get it in a couple of weeks. It's no big deal. We could write the order for you. And so when I hear all this stuff about equipment procurement and what a process it is and all the headaches, and I'm just like, who the fuck is getting rich, man? Like it doesn't make it to the people. Like it's literally politicians, shareholders, and crooked backdoor government deals with no end result. But factually, speaking from a guy who knows logistics and procurement, there's not much that isn't 2 weeks away. It just takes a PO and boom, like you can get it all.
Especially when we make some of the stuff that's super high end.
Yeah. Like
Colt Canada is not a bad company. Canada also makes the LAV 700. The LAV 700 we sell to Saudi Arabia.
Sure do.
That's the vehicle we were supposed to get to replace the LAV 3. Yeah. The LAV 700 is a fully modular armored package with a better power to weight ratio than our LAV 6, and it can mount like full on board, like it has tow launchers as part of its package. It has I think there's a 105 variant. There's ones with twin 30s. Like it's an entire weapons platform.
Yeah.
And we went for the LAV 3 Plus program. Like it was not even supposed to be a vehicle.
Well, even the Leopard tank. Like, how many turrets are we going to put in this fucking thing before we just get a different tank?
Well, the Leopard 2 is such an interesting thing as well. The Germans were going to build us tank maintenance facilities in Alberta and Ontario for free.
Yeah.
Because they want
That's part of the program.
They want their vehicles to be maintained.
Yep.
And the Ottawa said no because they had to be built in Quebec. They had to build both the maintenance facilities in Quebec. And the Germans said, "Nein, there's no tanks there."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Doesn't matter. We're going to put our tank factories in Quebec."
Yeah.
And the Germans were like, "Cool, we're not going to build them then. It was supposed to be free, but now we're not going to build them."
Yep.
The same thing happened to the Americans. The Americans were going to give us Humvees, Blackhawks, and Abrams tanks for cents on the dollar. Just because
have you seen some of their surplus yards where it's just like acres and acres of...
I know when I was in the military, they left an Abrams tank in Pet, and they just didn't come get it because it was cheaper to leave it there.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that where it's like they wanted us to have the same equipment as them so that in the event of total war...
Hello, NORAD brothers. Let's all be on the same page.
Yeah, partner force.
They literally envelop us. Like in the event of a full-scale war, we become the 5th American Brigade, our entire military.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is we 100% depend on the U.S. for our autonomy. We do not have a military that can cover even a small portion of our massive footprint here in Canada. And when we depend on it 100%, yet we tend
our fucking coastline alone is one of the largest in the world.
Yeah.
There's nowhere near enough ships to even patrol a fraction. I'm talking like 0.0 something % of it could be controlled by the Canadian Navy.
Yeah, I think this is where what we're seeing right now with this border dispute with Donald Trump and the outgoing Prime Minister Trudeau, and
is he outgoing though? Like, why is he still there?
Well, he said today that he's not going to hang on because Trump called him on it on X. He's like, I heard he's trying to hang on to power. He's like, I'm not hanging on to power, as he clutches dearly onto power. But the gaslighting that's coming out of our federally owned media in Canada is just like, it's ridiculous. And the fact that anyone in this country buys it is just staggering to me. And I hate to say it, but it's like watching the COVID psyop all over again. It's the same messaging, the same mentality, the same like dividing lines, the same kind of rhetoric that we saw before. And it's like, it's wild to watch. It's insane to watch. But so I guess did we cover that though? You said the military kind of has it might be irredeemable, but if it was redeemed, if good people got in there, like, would you go back?
Yes, if the organization was somehow able to if it was able to revitalize itself somehow. I don't know how you get that much rot. Like, I don't know at what point you just burn the ship down and build a new one.
Well, I don't think we can. I think that's where Donald Trump is 100% right about this. He's like, there's so much wrong with Canada. Like, you're going to need a military. The world's biggest one is right there. So just saying.
When we become a state, would you just join the National Guard then? If that was an option? Is that a better way to put it, Dave?
Yeah, something like that. Like but what we're seeing in the U.S. is we're seeing a change. There's just people re-enlisting. There's people going back. I don't think that Canada has an option to be irredeemable. It has to be redeemed. It has to be fixed. There's no other option, right? So, and even if there was a situation of like balkanization and stuff like that, I'm just curious about whether or not going through all that killed your desire to pursue that or killed your desire to serve.
All I want to do is help people. I wanted to be a cop. It's not in the cards for this part of the world right now, maybe in the States.
Sure.
I feel like my patriotism for this nation has died. What I went through killed it. What I saw my fellow Canadians be willing to do under the guise of social norm to other Canadians killed that for me. I would love to see Canada rise to where it should be. Because like realistically, if we were even a shadow of what we could be, we would be one of the preeminent powers per capita on the planet.
Well, and realistically, it wasn't that long ago we were in that position.
And we could be there again. And like, I understand what you're saying about there has to be some level of like, you have to be redeemable to some degree. But like, I don't know how, like there's such a disparity between East and West just alone.
Yeah.
Like the Canadians on the East and the Canadians on the West are not the same people. Like Alberta is a completely different beast.
Yep.
Like if I was Donald Trump, I would take Manitoba West because you have a tapering in the border where we have our big Great Lake, our huge lake, our bay, Hudson Bay.
Yeah.
Where it comes across down to the border. It's the easiest border to defend, and you get your 80% of Canada's resources, and you don't have to deal with 2/3 of the population.
Yeah, and I think that's...
and that's not advice. That's just like being pragmatic.
Yeah, I think
if you're listening.
I think that Canada as a country, and I think this is going to come post Trudeau, whenever the election happens. I think there will be a change. With I don't want to believe that Canadians are just going to be like duped into voting for, the Liberals to maintain power. I think that ship will change. It's either going to have to happen slowly or imminently, like really, really fast. So rapid change is essentially revolution.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that I'm saying like people need to revolt, but rapid change happens. It's not because you chose it. It's because it's forced upon you. It's because now bad things are happening and you don't have anything in place to deal with it, and things have to be done. And Canada just doesn't have the logistics to make it happen, to coast defend the Arctic and all that stuff. It's just not there. So something has to give, and it's not like a fix now. I think you're right. I think any kind of fixes, we're talking generationally. We're talking like 30, 40, 50 years down the road is maybe this thing can be righted, because I think it has gotten that bad. I think you're right. I think the rot is so deep in the leadership, in the messaging. I mean, we saw the Canadian intelligence utilized against Canadian citizens to track cell phones during COVID. We saw the military using propaganda messaging on television. You can Google it. You can look up the news stories. This is fact.
They froze Canadian bank accounts.
Yeah.
For having a different political view.
Yeah. For honking horns in Ottawa. Yeah.
That's where I come down to how can we be redeemable when we as a nation had that happening. That wasn't just happening over there. That was happening in Saskatchewan. That was happening in Alberta.
Yep.
That occurred and we did nothing. We sat here. Like there was the protest in Ottawa, which I have huge respect for.
Yeah.
I wish I could have been there, and I wasn't. That's on me. That all occurred, and when they got put down the way that they did, and the financial repercussions, people are still in jail over that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we did nothing as a nation to help them. We didn't revolt. We didn't have a revolution. Like our government overstepped, and we just let it go.
Oh, massively. Yeah.
And that, like, how do you redeem from that? Like, we've literally rolled over and showed our stomachs to our federal government, and now we're trying to like come back from that. Yeah,
that's a long road. It's a long road.
They just banned more of our guns yesterday.
Oh yeah, it's that's I think at this point that's just going to be a given. They're going to do everything that they can on the way out to take shots at all of their political enemies, to do everything they can. I mean, that's where what you're seeing down in the U.S. right now. You see that regime change, and what's Trump 40 days in, and it's just burn the boats, man. He's coming in and just raise it all to the ground and salt the earth, because that's what has to be done.
Yeah.
That's the kind of political will that you have to change things, because they have gotten that bad. And I don't think I think any Canadian who's been had their eyes open in the past 4 years can't really deny that. I think there's a lot of people who want to put their heads in the sand again. I think there's a lot of people who are gaslit beyond belief in this country. But I think, there's more and more people. I mean, the conversations that we've had around this table have from people of varying backgrounds, varying viewpoints. they all seem to think the same thing. They all seem to go, yeah, something changed, during the pandemic, and something was revealed kind of about how power works and how power is going to be used against people and influence. And there's people who are, they're willing to stand up to it. They're willing to say, okay, we need to change something, and they're willing to do something about it. That's kind of the basis of this podcast, was to talk to people and to have these conversations and have these stories, because your situation, your experience was unique to you, but that there was a lot of people who shared that in our military, and it's not being talked about because our media will not allow it to be talked about, right? And if we don't tell our own stories, they just don't get told. So I hope people do get a chance to, hear this and hear your perspectives, and maybe be a little bit more informed about what that experience was like. So coming out of the military, what was the plan after that? Like back to the ranch, or?
Coming out of the military, it was hard. I was really lucky that I went fracking.
Okay.
Because it's a similar structure or hierarchy to a military organization.
In a good company, I'd imagine, yeah?
Yeah, just the way it was set up, just like the way your levels of authority work.
Yeah.
It was similar. It's not the same, obviously, but it was a nice transition period. So I'm pretty thankful for that, because I didn't have anything. Like I still didn't want to be out of the military. Like I said, if things hadn't been the way that they were, I'd still be there. Coming out and going into the oil field was a benefit. The oil field is a trap.
Sure. We all know that.
Anyone who's been in it or somehow got out can tell you that.
Yep.
You get stuck there, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I was thankful for it where it was there for me when everything else was requiring. I couldn't go to a restaurant. I couldn't go anywhere, but at least I could work in the oil field on certain jobs, because even that was touch and go.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, for sure. I remember all that.
But I was grateful for them to hire me when they did, and they did good by me. So that was the transition process, was just back in the oil field.
So what does the future look like for you? You got any plans, goals, dreams?
He's gonna marry a pretty girl.
I'm gonna marry a pretty girl, raise some kids.
Fucking A, man. Cheers to that.
She is pretty, so
there's no higher calling.
That's the big goal. I don't know whether or not I'm gonna be able to get into the States, or if I'm gonna stay here. I'd like to stay in Alberta, because I love Alberta. I love a lot of what Canadians should be, and a lot of what Canadians I grew up with.
Yep.
There's a lot of I don't want my talking about how Canada is a shadow of itself come across as the fact that I think there's a lot of really good Canadians who know what it means to be Canadian, who are not having a national crisis on what they're supposed to, like, we know what we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Canada doesn't, but the people who I grew up with and the people who raised me knew what it meant to be Canadian.
Yep.
It wasn't the crisis of identity is happening over there. And it's happening at our highest levels. It's happening at our lowest levels now too, but like those people still exist, and I don't want to take anything away from those people. I just don't know. I always think back to like this, it's not a proverb or whatever, but somebody told me a long time ago, because I was on a rant. It was in the midst of me getting kicked out of the military, about how Canada needed to change because it was losing its values and it was losing its compass, and it was losing its will to fight for its own people, if it even had something in the last 20 years. And what they told me was, if you have a field of thistles and 3 roses, which one's the weed?
Right.
So at what point am I just not supposed to, at what point am I supposed to leave? Because like, if I have my own values that I'm not willing to compromise, am I supposed to stay and fight everyone on their values that they're not willing to compromise? Because like, if they believe that I'm wrong and all of Canada believes that what I believe doesn't represent Canada or its values, at what point do I secede and go, you're right, I might believe that humans have intrinsic value and that we should fight for our freedoms, we should be allowed to defend ourselves, and we should have a national pride. At what point do I go, okay, well, that exists, one border south.
Yep.
At what point do I just leave and let Canada do Canada things?
Well, I think people, Canada needs leaders, and so I think it's easy. And believe me, brother, I fucking get it where you're coming from.
Oh, 100%.
About trying to, you feel like you're the guy standing on the mountain by yourself, shouting at everyone to just please fucking listen, and they don't. I think it's important to hang on to that. I don't think. I think the message resonates further than we imagine. I just think culturally, being Canadian, we're a very, if you want to call us a colonized people, where you just shut the fuck up and don't say anything.
Yeah.
Because there's safety in numbers. And Canadians are kind of like sheep. It's safe to be in the herd, right? And that's why everybody lined up in the first place, because there's safety in numbers. But I think Canada does need leaders, and I think it's important. It's easy to lose sight of that fact and feel isolated, but you're not alone. Like, there's a lot of us feel that same way, and it's important that people step up and say it.
Yeah, that's why I said I'm super appreciative of you coming on here to have this conversation with us, because you're just not hearing it. You're just not seeing it. I can count dozens of U.S.-based podcasts where U.S. military, former military, are coming out and speaking out about the same things you're speaking out against. And it's not happening here. It's not being talked about. Our media is, I did a search on Grok here recently about how much is Canadian media subsidized by the government. It's all of it, be it from the tiniest newspaper, the tiniest publication, to the, the biggest, CTV Global, CBC. It's all owned by the government. It's all subsidized. We don't have free speech. We don't have those rights. But freedom is not something that you're given. Freedom is something you take, right? Liberty is something you fight for, right? It's not no power structure is going to give it to you. That's the nature of it. And, we're a nation in name. And I think, like, you're right, throughout Canada, there's people who are willing to stand up various parts. It's kind of isolated pockets. But a lot of people are just still duped. It's a colonial or colonized mindset where all of a sudden all the ads on television are, I'm a Canadian company. The Brick's a Canadian company. Tim Hortons, we're from Canada. No, you're not. You're owned by Americans. You're owned by, like, Burger King or some shit. Like, none of that's true, yet we're accepting it. We accept it, and we don't fight back against it. We don't push back against it. So I'm 100% with you, Lucas, that we do have a responsibility to speak out. We do have a responsibility to push back, and I 100% am with you in the, why stay in a place where my efforts, my beliefs, my values aren't echoed, aren't supported, or they're constantly undermined when there's, our neighbor that values those things, right? And yeah, that I think a lot of people are having that battle right now.
So if I can ask a question, just to you guys, because you guys are both, I consider you my betters, my elders. What do you see happening as far as change positively occurring in Canada, and how do we make that happen? Because, like, I don't know the steps to take, and I haven't known the steps to take since I left the military. Like, how do we make the change that we want to see? Like, because there's a secessionist movement in Western Canada.
Yeah.
There's the big border threats from Trump, and then there's the whole current political sphere that is Canada.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, or I'll?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
I would say mostly everyone thinks I'm probably, pretty radical in my views, but I don't think Canada can be saved, and I don't fucking care about it. I don't feel especially patriotic about being Canadian anymore. But I am an Albertan. Mm-hmm. It's my fucking province.
Yeah, I feel that.
And whether Alberta wants to take a run at independence period, or, do I, 51st state Alberta, like, become American. I don't know if I really feel especially American either, but fucking don't tempt me with rights. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you look at what we're left with, and I'm just tired of being in the colony. I'm tired of being gaslit all the time. Like, you want to talk about our Canadian identity as like, we love to be gaslit and lied to. And that's just what they keep feeding us through the government, through the media. I don't think it's, and personally, I don't think it's fucking worth saving, because I want my children to grow up in a better world. Like, I don't really want to hand them a shit sandwich. Like, when I look at where Canada is as a nation, man, do you want your children to inherit that? I don't.
I agree.
So I'm pro Albertan, and what that looks like, I'm not sure. But there's no denying, like, personally, I feel that having rights like the Americans do, I don't see the downside of having rights.
I had that same that same conversation with my fiance the other day, talking about how if we move to the States, she's like, what if it's the same? What if you get another Biden in power, or what if you get the Trudeau version down?
Right, and
it's like, well, at least you're protected underneath the Constitution. The Constitution is an infallible document that you're not allowed to tread upon, or at least supposedly.
Yeah,
we don't even have that. We have nothing.
Right, and I just don't see, a lot of people are hanging their hopes and dreams on Poilievre to kind of right the ship and change things, and I just don't see that. And
not in the last week, anyway.
No, I just don't see that happening. So, I think Alberta could exist just fine by itself. And I'm not saying it would be easy. That's not what I'm saying. But financially, like, not having to pay to have the rest of the country on welfare, I think, like, everybody in Alberta would be a lot better off without the rest of Canada. And
you can't say that in reverse, though.
No, certainly not.
That's
like,
the thing that always hangs people up. It's like, well, what would happen to the East Coast? I don't particularly care.
And
they're more of a distinct society than we are.
People in Alberta are okay with hard work. And I don't feel like I owe the rest of the country my hard labor.
That's right. We shouldn't be paying 50% tax.
Right.
Yeah.
52%, I should say.
So I guess without derailing this entire conversation, like, that would be my summary of thoughts and feelings on that.
Yeah. Like, when you ask, like, is there a remedy to the situation that we're in? I think there is. I don't think I'd be doing this if I didn't. Like, doing something like this podcast. The reason why I wanted to pursue this is because I kind of had an idea, maybe during COVID, maybe probably call it post-COVID, maybe about 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, where I started to look at kind of what I would call, like, Western values. So, basically the same thing where we started this conversation at the very beginning. And you talk about this pioneer spirit. You talk about this rugged individualism. You talk about this personal accountability. And I believe that that's the antidote. Can it be spread far enough, wide enough, fast enough to fix things in a timely fashion? That I don't know. But I do know that it is the antidote to all the DEI wokeism that's been enforced upon people for the last decade, right? And I think there's some, you start to see guys like, when Jordan Peterson came out and started talking about clean your room, make your bed, and those kind of things starting to pick up steam, those kind of ideas catching on. The idea that there is some sort of a woke mind virus going around that is infecting people, and that there's ideas are as catching as a virus, right? And how do you oppose bad ideas? You oppose them with good ideas.
That's right.
Right?
The only thing about that, I agree with everything you said. Fully agree. My only thing that the way I don't see it catching on is what's easier for people. Personal accountability or people doing things for me.
100%.
Hard work or getting handouts. Like, which one's easier?
Yeah.
And it always comes down, it seems that way. Like, Alberta, the reason I respect this place and its people the most in Canada is it's a lot of young, middle-aged, even old people getting after it to provide for their families, to have some semblance of separation from them. Like, most people in Alberta want to be left alone. They want to do what they're going to do and be left alone. Like, they want their groups, they want their people, they want their recreational activities, they want to do all those things. They don't want the government to have their hand in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The rest of Canada is the opposite. They want their government to give them everything that they have in hand.
There's a lot of that. That's part of colonialism, right? That's this post-colonial. Our government is very, tied to Europe, very Eurocentric. So there's still old world colonial ties in Ottawa. They still treat the West as colonies. But if you had to ask me, what do you do about it? Where the rubber meets the road. So it's when I talk about personal accountability, I talk about you, I talk about me, it starts with yourself,
mm-hmm.
your own personal discipline, your own, okay, I'm going to make myself better. I'm going to clean up my act. And then it goes out from there. So it's family, it's relationships. It starts here. We just had a conversation with city councilor here, Chris Thiessen, local government. Acting local. It starts where you're at. Can any of us, do something or say something that's going to right the ship and make it all better? No. But it doesn't mean you're powerless. It doesn't mean you don't have a say in your future or a hand on the tiller of your own destiny. You do. It just starts with you. It starts with you. It starts with your family. Then it starts with your community. And if we start fixing things at those small levels, then it will spread outward eventually. And if it doesn't, what does it matter? Right? If all we get is a better community, a better family, a better, us, then I think that's where we start.
I agree. Just going back to Lucas's point about would I want my kids to inherit that problem though?
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to inherit the liberal Canada.
Yeah.
This is when I was a kid. It's so interesting to me because I feel like I've been so blessed and cursed to have been born and raised in the time period that I was. Because I had a typewriter in my house when I was a kid.
Yep.
I had a rotary phone, and
same.
I had computer class. I'm not old. I'm 27. I just grew up in the part of the world where that was still like we weren't on the cutting edge. Let's say that. Okay. I got to experience all that, but like even in the last 10 years, you could go to McDonald's and get 2 burgers for $3. Now 1 burger is $5.
Yeah.
That's what we have to thank for under this current, I don't blame the rest of Canada. I don't blame the voting base of Canadians. I think it's all of our fault. The way Canada goes now, I still take personal responsibility for the fact that this is what Canada is now. It doesn't share my values that I grew up with. It doesn't share the hard work is valuable. Like most people work for the government now.
Yeah.
What percentage of our workforce works for the federal government?
Too much.
Yeah.
It's like 40 or 50%.
Yeah, it's too much.
It's 40 plus percent.
Yeah.
Which is insanity. How, no wonder we pay so much in tax. To have that much of your workforce dependent on the 60%.
Which we know is just a death spiral for any nation. Right?
Yeah, certainly, because we don't produce anything, and now
the government
doesn't
make things.
Do we go off on this next rant?
Absolutely, we do.
Well, so now we're in this. We find ourselves at this time in history where it's like, Trump wanting to impose tariffs on Canada, and you have Canadian politicians, rallying the cry of patriotism, where, we gotta support Canada, and we got fucking retards. I can use that word now because Trump's in power, right?
Sure.
You're canceled.
I don't think.
No, we literally have people booing the American national anthem at hockey games and thinking it's okay, like they're standing up to America. And then you have your politicians like, oh, we're gonna pull all the American booze out of the stores, and you're like, okay, like, good for you. Like, so as a business, you bought a bunch of American beer and now you're going to watch it expire in the back room and lose all your money. Like, whatever. If you want to stay stupid, stay stupid. Here's the news. We fucking sold out generations ago. We don't produce anything in Canada. So if you're going to boycott America, what are you going to do? Support the Chinese? Like, that's your other option.
Who just put tariffs on Canada.
Right. Like, we simply do not produce anything in this country. They sold us out long ago. We don't do anything.
We could be so strong. We've been cutting ourselves off at the knees for decades.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, if Trump had tried to do this to us, I don't think he's wrong to do it. I had this argument with someone at work the other day. They were like, he's a bully. I'm like, it's global politics. Why wouldn't you be a bully?
You have to be.
Like, it's not a game for friends. The man wants America's interest first. I understand that. I wish we had that.
And you know what he really wants? He wants his younger brother to smarten up.
He wants all of his younger brothers to smarten up.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing to EU. He's telling them to he's trying
to
wipe their nose, pick their pants up. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Hey, like, it looks like you're having fun, but cocaine and whores isn't a path to success. I mean, that's basically what he's saying to Canada.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. Like I said, Trump is 40 days into a presidency,
which is crazy.
That has shaken up the entire world. Yeah. I don't know what Canada's going to look like in 6 months, and I don't know what it's going to look like in a year. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is it's so easy to get wrapped up in this hyper global chess game that's going on, and not see that real work, real difference is going to happen on the ground. It's going to be much, much smaller. And if we do that, and that might be done here, done elsewhere, right? I think that's the same everywhere, because if we have this conversation and people are leading by example, and people are leading by leading. And when I say lead by example, when people are together, they're like in their life. You lead by just living. People see you. They see how you're living your life. They see that your lawn is cut. Your house is well maintained. You got a good-looking family, right? That is subconsciously imprints, because we all want to be like, right? We see that and we want to be like. We say we have to take back some of that moral attitude, and that has to go into culture. This is where we get into these like ideas about culture war and stuff like that, where a lot of this psyop does come from culture, where people are dependent on whatever because they're duped out of their own agency, because they want to follow what's happening in media, or follow what's happening in Hollywood, or follow this celebrity, or this TikTok influencer or whatever. None of that is real, and I think we're seeing that. We're seeing stuff start to fall apart. I'm starting to meet some fantastic people who are very, very successful, and they're starting to get out. What we see on the conservative side is very successful people are generally quiet on the conservative side. They just want to be left alone. They just want to live their life and be left alone. Those people are starting to speak out. Those people are starting to step into roles of community leadership, because they see the vacuum and they're like, this thing's not going to fix itself. Someone has to step in. Someone has to fix this, because they don't want their kids and they don't want their grandkids to inherit some utter fucking dumpster fire of a nation. And we're starting to see it. It's a big ship that turns slowly. It could happen. Like, change could happen really, really quickly, but that's generally like blood and fire. And I can't imagine anybody wants that.
Never peaceful. No, definitely not.
But the other option is slow, deliberate change. And that's just going to happen at the base level. That's going to happen at people looking after their family, people looking after their community, right? And getting involved in those things and starting those grassroots movements, and not being co-opted by grifters and sucked into the zeitgeist, like in Canada, where it's, big government, it's all good. It's, parent government is here to help you. It's like, no, like, the people are here to help you. We help each other. It's community, not because, your dad was prime minister at one point, or you suck dicks at the World Bank, or whatever the fuck you did, right? Like, none of that. It's supposed to be people. It's supposed to be community helping each other out. And I think that the bloom has come off the rose enough on this that people are awake enough. Are they awake enough to do what we just saw down south, where you had, this massive sweeping election where people, said, no, enough is enough? I think that remains to be seen. You can't believe the polls and you can't believe the media. That I know.
Out, yeah.
That I know. Right? Are our elections valid enough and uninterfered with enough to be, to have a change outcome? Who knows? We're going to find out. And you just keep hammering at that door, man. That's all we can do. Like because you always have options, right? We can go and move to a place that shares our values, or we can stay here and fight for it. You can come and go and fight for it too. Expats are a thing, but nobody hands you freedom, man. Nobody hands you liberty. Nobody hands you the keys to your own life. That's something you stand up and take on your own. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the example that we're starting to see with people. They want that for their kids. They want that for their grandkids, right? They want to say, I stood up. I said no, right? I didn't, say horrible things about people because they didn't take some medical intervention and this, that, and the other thing. Those things will come home to roost for those people. We're starting to see that tide turn a little bit. I don't like the idea of neighbor against neighbor or anything like that. I don't think that's constructive, but it's going to take leadership. And I think there's a huge vacuum of that in our country. Just look at who's on the docket for the next election. Right? Yeah. Any great, powerful, inspiring leaders there? I don't know.
We'll see. I don't put a lot of faith in politicians.
Slim pick.
Nor should you.
Yeah. My only thing I ever liked about Trump when he was getting into office was the fact that he wasn't one.
Yeah. He's just a disruptive force.
Yeah, he's a force of nature.
Like he's just disruptive, and that's what I like about him, because I'm a person who likes the idea where you break up the establishment, because anything that breaks up the established order when the order is inherently corrupt is a good thing, because it allows the opportunity for change agents to get involved who can move the needle a little bit the other way.
I would like to have faith in Polyev. My problem is we don't have anything in like the Constitution.
No.
Canada doesn't have a constitution, which is our biggest failing as a nation, in my own opinion, because
we're still a colony of Europe.
Yes, you're correct, but that just saying that out loud is one thing, but the fact that we sit here with no rights other than the rights that our government thinks they gave to us is a problem.
Well, we don't have rights. We have privileges.
We don't have rights.
Right, and privileges which can be revoked.
Which is absolutely abhorrent to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. The biggest display of that was people going to prison for protesting and getting their bank accounts frozen by a bank that launders billions for cartels. If we should have had a revolution, it would have been then. Well, I think that's the thing. I think for Canada, just based on its size, it's either a slow burn to change, or it's going to be very regional. I think that's what we're going to see. I don't think there's political will. I could be wrong. I don't think there's political will on a national scale to see the righting of the ship without it being like generations from now, like 40, 50, 60 years.
If we don't change course very soon, we're the next UK, where you're getting people in prison for thought crimes and for speaking out and
exactly, which
praying in your own home.
Yeah, so that's what's on the menu for us. There's which is why I think change right away, or we're fucked. Like it's
which is what I mean about acting locally, right? So we saw that in during the pandemic, where your experience during the pandemic was dependent upon where you lived, right? Some locales had more restriction, had more government malfeasance. Others had less. You had some townships just say no, like stand up, not letting health officials in our town. I think there's more of that to be had. I think it's going to happen small scale. I think it's going to start in Alberta. I mean, we may be the center. Like, you may be right. Alberta may be the center of Canada now. Alberta might be what saves Canada. Alberta might be by standing up and declaring their own sovereignty, might be the wake-up call that the nation needs to give its fucking head a shake. Well, I have my doubts.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think that, this way lieth destruction, no matter which way we cut it. And at the other end of that, is there prosperity? Is there peace? Who the fuck knows? Right?
Alberta won't succeed if they do it to save Canada. Alberta will succeed if they do it to save Alberta.
Well, that's what I mean, on its own. So if it's done, like when we talked about, and you asked me if I would vote for to separate, and I said yes, because the idea needs to have teeth, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to come. It's like being in the relationship where it's like, no, I'm leaving. Like, this is no good, right? And maybe that's the case. Maybe that needs to stand. Maybe the bluff needs to be called. You know, everybody put their cards on the table. Let's talk about this and figure out where we're at, because we're done with whatever is happening. You know, that said, we're in a time of crazy, wild shit happening, and change happening all over the place. Can we see some semblance of change? Maybe. Who knows? Can it happen fast enough? I don't know. That remains to be seen.
Yeah, we're going to find out.
Yeah. Well, shit, man.
It's going to be really interesting when, if it does go the way you're talking and they've already taken all our guns away.
Well, now you got them saying that we should have them to defend. They want a national defense force, and
hilarious.
Just I can't.
You can't.
The day before a national gun ban.
The mental gymnastics required to participate in Canadian politics, like you just.
No, I think you're totally right. It's a fucking clown show.
Yeah.
I think the word retard isn't strong enough. I think that
I don't think so either.
We need a stronger word, like, because what's going on is just. I think people see it. I think when you see the polls and they're talking about this liberal resurgence, I don't think any of that's real. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. I think what we're going to see what we're going to see in our election. We're going to see what we're going to see with change. My thing is just, will it be fast enough? Can you right the ship? I don't know.
I would say that regardless of how I might feel about this nation as a whole, service and the call to service is a noble thing. So from one man to another, thank you for your service, because I think it's important. So
absolutely,
regardless of how they decided to treat you, it's still a noble endeavor, and I thank you for it.
Yeah, I
appreciate that in the semblance of I got to be in the presence of the people who actually fought.
You know, you did the thing that I think a lot of people would like to do. There's a level of fear to commit, myself included. I didn't do that, and there's a whole other podcast we'll go down the road on another day with the way the world is now and how we treat our veterans. But you definitely have my respect, and thank you again for coming on, sharing your experience, sharing your story. We don't see enough of it in Canada. Hopefully this reaches out to people that need to hear it, because I know there's a lot of stories like yours out there, and hopefully that a few people who didn't know what was going on in the general public get to hear this, and it kind of opens their eyes to how bad things are in one of our most critical, ministries for our nation.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and CastBox. You can help us grow the channel by giving us a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, all that shit. Algorithm being what it is. Social media, you can find us on Instagram, X, Facebook. You can check out our website at thegreyrange.com, where you can find every episode of the podcast, as well as merch like these cool t-shirts we're wearing and other things on there. I can't remember what's on there. And then you can find the new book, Whiskey Painted Holocaust, on there, and also the blog, which Dave uploads to semi-frequently.
Yeah, we're getting there. We'll probably went up there tomorrow, actually.
Excellent.
Trying to get to upload on weekends again. I kind of crashed my old website down, and we'll get to putting some writing up there. Probably upload that stuff on weekends. So regular stuff happening. Again, thank you guys for spending time with me and for coming in here, having this conversation. I would love to do this again post-election, 6 months down the road, provided you're still here. Or any of us are still here.
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe we all pull up stakes and fucking head south. I don't know.
Montana's looking pretty good.
All right. This is the Grey Range Podcast. Out.